March 8th. Parenthetically, it's my son's 30th birthday. And I'd like to quickly review the agenda for tonight. We'll have community input, followed by the LAPC update with Chief Fisher, followed by a discussion about continuing to provide free COVID testing here in town with Chief Soros. Then a joint meeting with the Finance Committee around the FY23 budget. At 7:50, we will review and close the annual town meeting warrant, and that will include a discussion about an increase in our cemetery fees. Then followed at 8:50 by sort of an update on the interim town administrator and the permanent town administrator. And hopefully we are making an appointment of the interim town administrator this evening. At 9:30, our town administrator's report. 9:45, appointments and liaison reports. As far as I know, we have no appointments, so it'll just be liaison reports. And then approval of the minutes that are in your packet and adjournment by, we hope, 10 o'clock. So with that, I would like to ask anyone who may be with us online, because we don't have any members of the community here in the room. Is there anybody online who would like to offer a comment during the community input period? If you wish, please, let's see, I don't see everybody that's on the call. Is there a way to get to that? Yeah, can you see, is there anybody raising his or her hand? No. Okay, all right. Then I'm gonna move on, seeing no interest, no one requesting to make community input. And with that, I'd like to introduce Chief Fisher. Thank you, Chief, for being with us tonight and providing us with the LAPC update.
Well, thanks for having me. So the LAPC met yesterday and discussed several items. I think importantly, Linda Fantasia from the Board of Health reported that there have only been 5 cases in March and 4 were from one household. But back up to January where we had 286 and then
oh, John, we just lost you, I think. Maybe Minuteman Media looks like.
Well, yeah, while we're waiting for him to get back on, we actually can't see you in the room.
Oh, okay. Let's see if we can get that updated. No, he's saying he can't see us. And generally they're able to view the select board members that are here in person. Yep, so I'll just tell those that are on the call that we have David Modell is here to my right. I'm Barney Arnold, Kate Reed to my left, and farthest to my left is Luke Oscalillo, Tim Goddard, our town administrator. And we have a woman from Minuteman Media providing the live streaming. And Nathan Brown, our 5th member, is online. Well, why don't we continue, Nathan, if it's all right with you? Looks like we have Chief, pardon? Yeah, it looks like we have Chief Fisher back. Yeah.
Sorry about that. I don't know what went awry there. But in any event, so the bottom line is cases in Carlisle are very low. And that's really good news. Chief Soros did report for the fire department. They were able to use their classroom for training. It's been almost 2 years. They're continuing to do the PCR tests. They're doing about 2 to 15 a day, but I know you're going to hear from Chief Soros, so I want to elaborate on that. Suffice to say, the COA has done lots of fantastic programming through this, and that continued last month and is scheduled for March. The neighbor response team, Lori Eckler reported they're still providing food and supplies for the families that they've been working with. And yesterday, the schools had their the pool testing and the at-home testing is still continuing in the schools. And Jim O'Shea wanted to recognize Trish McGeehan for all her important work, our public health nurse, and helping them through some times. And the LAPC as a group, just recognizes Trish's fantastic work. Um,
Whoops. John, you seem to have frozen again. Nathan, can you still hear us?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay.
But John has frozen. Nope, he's back. Nope, now he's frozen.
Oops.
But anyway, an important thing is the LEPC has elected to stand down from an emergency standpoint, and we're going to go back to our quarterly meetings. And our next meeting will be June 13th. And that I'll probably touch base with you folks to see if you still want an LEPC update at that point. The last thing the LEPC did discuss was the mask mandate at Town Hall. And I think that you're going to discuss that tonight, but the LEPC did support, lifting the mask mandate has been done for other spots in town. Anybody specific questions, thoughts, concerns?
No, thank you, John. I will just say that I'm sure all of us on the select board extend our appreciation to Trish McGeehan as well for the amazing work she's done on behalf of the school and the community. I'm glad you recognized her. Anybody else have a question?
No, I'm just wondering if we're gonna take up the mask mandate ourselves
Yeah.
at this point.
So does it
Part of
make
the
sense to do that
LEPC.
right now?
Yeah.
I think that does too. Would we so just quick background, at our last select board meeting, we had some discussion about the mask mandate, and then following that, did not make a decision, but following that, Tim and I had some conversation, and since the select board had not had a chance to really discuss it and take a position, Tim elected to continue the mask mandate for Town Hall, which has been in place then since our last meeting. So tonight, I think we have an opportunity, now that we know from both the Board of Health and the LEPC and the school, that the mask mandate has become optional. I think we should consider a motion to make the mask mandate optional for Town Hall employees. I will just ask first for Tim, do you have a comment as our town administrator on how you, well, maybe should we get the motion on the floor and then you can offer your
Can I
comment?
ask just a quick question before
Yeah.
we even do the motion, since this isn't actually on the agenda? When did the mask mandate expire? Has it expired?
Not
Well,
in town hall.
No, what happened was the Board of Health met at their meeting. I think it was maybe the Wednesday before the select board had our meeting, and they voted to make it mandatory. Optional as an indoor masks would then be optional, and that was their Board of Health position. But, they clarified with us that that did not mean that the town hall had to continue that under, the current bylaws, the town administrator is responsible for the operation of town hall. So since we as a select board had not had a chance to discuss it, while the Board of Health issued their new policy immediately, Tim, as town administrator, decided to continue the mask policy for town hall. So it's never ended.
And so the mask mandate that we put on for town hall did not have an expiration date?
Correct. But I think we discussed, Tim, when you sent out the notice to the staff, did it say till the 11th, till this Friday?
Right, unless and until the board voted differently sooner, yes.
Yeah, so did you hear that, Nathan?
First opportunity.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering when we first put it on there, I think typically there was end dates. I was just wondering if there was an end date on this one that maybe it already expired.
No, the end date was either this coming Friday or sooner if the select board met and chose to end it sooner.
I think, Nathan, we stopped putting end dates after at a certain point. We were putting, it was like until last year, it was like from March, 2020 to whenever. And it just, I don't believe we had an end date on our last mandate.
Okay, I thought we did. So I was hoping that it had just already expired.
Well, you let me know when
Well, I was just going to say, the other thing is, what we have done in the past with the Board of Health, policies is just indicated our support for them.
Right.
I'm not sure we've taken an actual, motion to, a vote, put a motion on the floor and voted. If I'm remembering this correctly, Tim, we have just, endorsed,
Might have voted, but who was to endorse?
Voted to
Endorse
support,
voted
so.
to endorse the ruling of the Board of Health.
Yep.
Yeah, I
The
mean-
policy of the Board of Health. So should we
Okay.
do it that way again?
Well, I'd like to comment. So the reason we voted to support the Board of Health rather than make our own mandate was we tried to keep everybody in alignment. We didn't want to go,
Right.
library says this, select board says this, school says, we didn't want that. At least I can speak for me, I didn't want that. So we thought the best way to do that was to follow the guidance of the Board of Health and just support them. And that was that. And that guidance was everybody wears a mask. Now, it's always been the case that DESI, and then the schools listen to DESI, that they kind of have their own rules, different situation. But DESI also kind of said to all the towns a couple weeks ago, and the governor said, Feb 28th, we're done, right? The school board voted, and I think they voted, prudently to give it the week of vacation and everybody coming back from vacation and make sure before they released their mandate that there were no little boomlets, because who knows? I believe that was prudent. That's what they did. And I believe on Monday, maybe Brian knows, but on Monday, I think they then went maskless, including on the bus. Board of Health went forward, as you say, ahead of time and released it. But the question was, what did release mean? Well, release didn't mean town hall because that's the purview of the town administrator and the select board. And it didn't mean the library because they have their own board. Maybe it meant Ferns. I mean, I don't know what else it meant. So, all I want to say about it is I still believe we should act in unison. And the reason we just, because of calendar timing of meetings, we couldn't do it at the same time. But as we sit today on the 8th, again, correct me if I'm wrong, schools are now mask optional. I presume Ferns is mask optional. I don't know whether the library, I forget now, did the library meet?
Yeah, the Board of Trustees, the trustees agreed to, remove the mandatory mask, but recommend that, particularly children continue to wear masks,
Recommend, but not require.
not
So
require.
let's say mask optional.
Right,
So we're left with town hall and we might have done it a couple of days ago if the meetings had worked out, but the fact is here we are on the 8th. So I guess I am supporting, making mask optional in the town offices. But it's not exactly the same as just supporting the Board of Health recommendation.
yeah,
That's
that's correct. All right, so with that understanding, and Tim, did you want to offer any comments, on this?
Well, just to say that the Board of Health's vote technically was to replace the mask mandate with a mask advisory consistent with CDC guidelines.
Okay,
And they have a web, they point to a link where that, the CDC guidelines is spelled out, so we can certainly make that available,
okay,
as well.
great.
And I think that would be appropriate for the town hall. I mean, it's
Yeah.
people who, they're advising that they recommend a mask for people who are not vaccinated or people that are immunocompromised, or if they're living with somebody who's immunocompromised or living with a baby, or whatever. So I think that's a legitimate.
So,
thing. So
yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to endorse, to support the recommendation of the Board of Health to remove the mask mandate and go to a mask advisory and to make that effective immediately for town hall.
Second.
Any discussion?
I'd like to just bring up one point, and I'm not trying to be difficult, but we could have done this like a week and a half ago. I think that the thing that I had brought up was, we didn't have the document that they had put together that we would be voting to support. And we still don't have that. It wasn't a posted agenda item. It's still not a posted agenda item. I support this. but it's just kind of a process thing that I just want to point out that I think we need to close the gaps a little bit better on these things. So I do support this, but it's the process of how we got there. We're in the same situation where we were when we were on that Thursday meeting, and so we could have done this and gotten rid of the ambiguity, because at this point we still don't have what we didn't have then.
Well, it's publicly available though. But let's move on because I think we're all in agreement and, you know, I appreciate the input about the process, Nathan. Alrighty, so let's take a roll call vote, please. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Arnold, aye.
Oscar Lilo, aye.
Brown eye.
Modell, aye.
Reed, aye.
Great, thank you very much. And look at this, we can remove our masks if you feel comfortable doing so. Okay, excellent. So let's continue on. I see Chief Saros is here. Thank you very much, Chief, for coming. And so we're on the section of our agenda where we're discussing the continued COVID testing that our town has been providing through the great work of the fire department. And that's something we've been providing to town residents at no cost to them. And Brian has provided us with some information on that. Would you like to come up and just give a short, you can sit here if you'd like to, we have an open mic, Chief, and just walk us through your thinking about it. And if you do have a recommendation.
Right, I wasn't sure exactly what we were looking for here, so I just gave some information.
Okay.
Lots of my friends. So, you know, at the time we set this up, we were the only game in town, really. And it was something that's been quite helpful to residents, I believe. And people have been very thankful for it. We have had funding for it. We're getting reimbursed, and so that's been helpful as well. You know, if we were right now to say, oh, we should go set up a testing, I would say, you know, whatever, but we're past the public health emergency that we had. So at this point, it's not so much a public health thing. There are some people that still need PCR tests, and like this is very subjective numbers I'm giving you, but over half the people that we're testing, they either need to travel where they need a PCR test, they need to have surgery scheduled that they need a PCR test, or I believe the nursery schools are still requiring them to come back. And so these are, you know, parents who are trying to get their kids back in. We do, for that group, we do a significantly better job than even pediatricians at doing it, in terms of kids freaking out and, you know, blood everywhere and, you know, traumatic event. So I think there is, you know, I wouldn't necessarily say we should start one up, but I also, at this point, we have a system that's working. I wouldn't necessarily mess with it until there are two factors that will come into play. One is if we, if after the end of March, into this month, there's no other funding that comes into play. You know, Biden in his speech in his State of the Union said, then we'll do, you know, we'll pay for testing more. You know, the state's closing down, everybody's closing down their testing sites. So I could easily imagine that something's going to come in from there. That's funding. The other thing is the program that we're doing this through might end. So we have a the folks we do paramedics with offer to, you know, come by each of the fire stations, pick up your samples and all this kind of thing. And this was designed for the police and fire race, basically keep us in the game. And when I asked them, you know, what's your capacity, they said, whatever you send us. And that's when I said, turn around and said, okay, let's offer it to outside. But so they're still offering this. At some point, you know, for them, it's going to be, they're not going to want to continue. So at that point, you know, we will probably quit doing it. There is a lab in Acton that we could go with, but you know, we kind of have a system down. I'd say we keep on going as long as we have funding. When we don't have funding, we could think about, a couple of options. One is, that, the fire department eats it for town employees, but outside of that, people will come in with a check and we'll figure out how to make that work. I've asked Kelly to think about how to make that work. It was very complicated. We started to do that, and it was very complicated to do that when some of them were being reimbursed and some weren't. And so then there was this whole complicated, what are we asking for and all that, where it's much easier just to say we're testing and we can do it. So we could look at that, or, again, we can decide not to do it. The other thing, of course, ARPA funds is explicit that they would pay for it. Now, it's nice to have that as in your back pocket if all of a sudden we get a variant come through with the problem. We're all hoping that, 2 years ago when we started doing this, I would have never dreamt we'd still be in the game. But we are. So I don't know whether the discussion is about ARPA, the discussion is about using town funds, or the discussion is about, I don't know what we're trying to make a recommendation about. Like I say, I think we should do it until the money's gone.
Which is the end of the month.
Right.
For sure, but you made mention there might be more.
Who knows what the federal government's gonna do?
No, but you don't have, so you have no idea whether you really would. So I guess we should plan. It seems to me if there's funding, of course, but I guess we should consider that funding is over.
Right,
So
so
then the question is, do you want to use ARPA funding for it? And then, in terms of that, we don't really know how much to reserve for doing that. It's other than the lab fees, which is $45 a test, which is something, the rest of it's quite efficient.
So let me offer just a couple of numbers, because I took your information here. So it's $45 a test, and then the cost you indicated for your the staff cost, payroll cost is somewhere between $20 and $50 a day. Is that right? So I just took I took your in-between number for the number of tests. You said it's anywhere from 2 to 20. So I just did 10 tests a day times 5 days times 4 weeks. And at $45 a test, that's $3,600 a month. And then again, I just took $35 a day for the labor cost at 5 days a week and 4 weeks. And that's $700 a month. So it's $4,300 a month on average, that if all the numbers stay the same, and hopefully it'll continue to drop, but that's $4,300 a month that either the town budget absorbs, or we use ARPA funding for as of April 1, unless there is a change, in the COVID situation where there's going to be more state funding or federal funding, but right now there's no expectation of that. And my own feeling about using the designated ARPA funds that have been allocated to Carlisle is that I don't see this, given the health status at the moment, as being a high priority, that we would want to take those funds and allocate them for this, as opposed to some of the other, what I would think of as more urgent needs, but that's just my personal opinion. And I also thought, if we want to hear what other people's thoughts are on this, and then if we're not ready to make a decision tonight, we could put it on the next select board meeting agenda to actually take a vote on whether or not, if we want to continue, how we would continue and what that cost would be, or if we're ready to say, until further notice, we will, end the free testing or some in-between measure. So those are my thoughts on it.
Well, actually, I went back and you said that you had applied to ARPA, and we don't have an application in ARPA for that. We have it for the tight tanks and for various other things.
But I'll resend it.
Would you? Because we don't have it.
Okay.
Okay, and I guess I think this is something that should go through ARPA, because it is COVID related.
Oh, it's very explicit that it would.
Yeah.
It passes the thing. The question
Yeah.
is that,
43.
again,
4,300.
at the time I did it, this was a very big public health, you know,
Sure.
thing. And every week it changes, right? And
Yeah.
the only thing I would say is that, you know, we can revisit the ARPA and we might consider doing that if all of a sudden some variant comes by that all of a sudden it becomes a public health issue again. That, you know, that we have several years to close out the ARPA.
Kate, I have a technical question on the ARPA. So let's just say we go with ARPA, let's say we use Barney's numbers and we allocate $50,000. Let's just say $50,000 for the year. And Brian exceeds it or it's under or over. I guess if it's over, we eat the difference because we only apply, or is there fungibility to those ARPA monies?
There's a little fungibility. We have what we call our parking lot. We've been parking, yeah, I mean, we haven't done anything really,
Yeah.
but we're saying we should park some funds in there so that if something like that
Okay.
were to come up.
And how about the other way? If it's underspent?
If it's underspent, we want to find another place to put it, to spend it real fast.
I mean, you can
Because-
move it back out.
Oh,
You could
yes, actually,
de-obligate it.
because in fact, that's another thing we would like to come back on the 22nd to talk about, because of these new rules, how much of the money we put into what they call revenue loss. And if we put all of it, then it's all, anything that government would normally do.
Okay.
So,
So, what I mean is it's not use it or lose it with regard to,
right,
you know, if
It
you
is,
park,
but I don't
It-
think you have
but
to
yes.
tell them ahead of time what it is you're gonna spend it on. I
Okay.
think you have
Right,
3 years to spend
exactly.
it and you
I
can
see.
rearrange.
Right.
you can rearrange. So we have a lot of
3 years.
flexibility. on
right,
it.
it's not
Okay,
use it or lose
thanks.
it like that.
Okay.
Yeah, but this would be, well, so really, if, you know, we had that proposal, we would have said, we need to have, you know, like a ballpark number because we want to tell the select board, you know, how much to put aside.
So at the time I did that, we were doing, you know, we had lines coming out the,
Yeah,
out
yeah.
the parking lot, and I think my number was $200,000
Yeah.
at the time.
Yeah,
Because again, it was
yeah.
back of the envelope.
So what I would say, most likely, you know, so it would be nice if, I will bring that packet to ARPA. Because I actually checked with Scott and said, you know,
It was
I'm
the first
getting a
one I sent.
I'm getting a reality check here. Did he? He said, no, he sent this email, but then we got these other things and then we never got the one for the.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. I'll go back to my email and resend it.
Okay, and then we would need all this, I'll send this, these materials to Scott and say, this is the backup material, and then we'll probably take it up at our next meeting, because we are stepping through some of these things, and I would imagine that, and I can't speak for ARPA, the ARPA committee, who then will come and talk to the select board, who will make the final decision, but I imagine that there would be some parking lot recommendation to say, let's park some funds in here if they're needed. Because I know, you know, we're not interested, for instance, we've already discussed that we're not interested in funding the instant tests, because there's so many we're awash in those instant tests, and, you know, and everybody can get 4 of them in their mailbox, and we don't see using ARPA funds for that. And then the PCR, we'll
yeah.
have to discuss it.
So that sounds great, makes sense. Let's hold on to any more ARPA conversation on this for the moment, and just
Yeah.
checking in. Luke or Nathan, do you have any thoughts about this? You want to share?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I actually think, you know, if the funding runs out, then we charge people. I mean, you know, because people are really gonna use it for travel. I mean, I'm gonna start traveling for work, you know, and it's a huge convenience, right? I mean, even though going to CVS is free because you're running through insurance, I will pay $45 a day in and day out to drive 2 minutes, right? And you know, you look at some of these numbers. I mean, this is incredible what you guys have done, you know, especially around Christmas and oh my gosh, it's been a phenomenal service to the town.
Very fast. I have to
And
say.
incredibly fast, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
very
and,
efficient.
yeah, and, you know, I mean, I think, you know, I think that everybody in town has appreciated, it. Everybody's probably used it, right? But yeah, I think it's time to,
Yeah, I think
So
our,
maybe we should
our
just-
town population has gone up quite a bit.
Yeah.
actually.
well, that's
Yeah.
another
Oh,
thing
yeah, I
too,
live in
right?
town, I live,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
But that brings up a point. Is there a for pay option or?
That's what
yeah,
we could
and I'm assuming,
decide to do,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and you just write a check out.
It's easier when it's one or the other, right? So as long as everybody's paying, then that, you know, we just have to figure out how to make that work in the budget. when it's, some people are paying and some of them getting reimbursed, that's where it got messy.
All right. Nathan, I just want to give you a chance if you had comments, and then I'm going to suggest we move on and we revisit this on the March 22 agenda, where we can, have a proposal going forward. But Nathan, comments?
Yeah, so Brian, I was just wanted to clarify, what is the question? Is the question whether or not we should continue for the month of March, or is the question whether or not we would continue after April?
It's April 1 on when the funding runs out.
Yeah, April 1 on, and I didn't know what the question was, to be honest with you. I thought, I didn't know what the decision was, what we're trying to decide.
Okay, I got the impression to be, I thought it was, should we keep going? And I was going to say, absolutely. I think we should keep going until April 1. And, I guess I would say that, it is a phenomenal service. I have used it. It is, as everybody else has said, it's very, very quick. I think it's one of those things that really, anybody in town can take advantage of. And so I would actually support ARPA money being used for it. But I think it's a phenomenal, service, and I really thank you for it. And I am in support of continuing it, certainly through March, see what happens. And I would say if for some reason we haven't given direction on, whether to keep going or not, that, we should support him continuing to do it until we do give him such direction.
Well, let's hold off on that, Nathan, because I would suggest, we are going to have it on the March 22 agenda. And I think we need to know more about what ARPA is going to, if they're coming forward with a recommendation versus the town budget covering it, if there's not a recommendation from ARPA. So if you don't mind, let's hold off on a vote beyond the end of March. We don't have a motion on the floor about continuing through March because that's not up for discussion, where that's a given. That we've said we want to continue because the FEMA reimbursement ends the end of this month. So that's why we're raising it to determine what we do April 1 going forward. All right.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, all. So let's move on, and thank you very
Great,
much,
Brian.
Chief
Yep.
Soros.
No, and the town's been very supportive, and I think this has been, something unique Carlisle did, and that I think worked well. I think it's one of the factors for us being able to have school last year.
Absolutely. And also, have such a low, hospitalization rate and,
And it
mortality.
relieved a lot of people's
Yeah,
concerns.
absolutely.
So,
Tremendous thanks to you and the rest of your staff. Yeah. Thank you. All righty. So let's move on. And we're ready for, and I apologize, we're running a little bit late, but thanks so much, Jim, the chair of the FinCom, for being here for our joint meeting with the Finance Committee. And are there members that you're expecting to be online, or? I am not, but I don't know for sure. Okay. I don't know, Tim, can you tell if there are other members of the?
I don't see any
Okay.
members of the FinCom.
So maybe this isn't a joint meeting then. Okay. But our purpose tonight then is to review the latest and greatest draft of the FY23 budget. And we have in our packets I believe it is the most up-to-date version, right? In the packet, the updated packet that came out yesterday, right, from Jen?
Send you this today, Jim?
No.
Today, well, I'll pass
No,
this down.
okay.
This is, they voted and recommended last evening.
Tim, is it possible to send a copy to Nathan electronically?
Yeah, what's being passed around?
Okay.
Yeah. It's
So
a
it's
nicer
different than what's in the
format,
packet,
easier to read.
A little
No,
bit,
that's
probably
a
a
Tim
little
question.
different. Do you want one? You've got one.
He's
Okay.
memorized it.
So, so I think that means we probably don't need to look at the version that's in the packet, except that, unless people had notes on their version or
I
something.
have notes on mine.
All right. So, do you want to come up to a microphone, Jim, and, maybe offer, just some of the, yeah, you can sit at the chair there. Yeah.
I don't mean to turn my back on you, Nathan, but this is the way it is.
Yeah, it's all right.
Everybody
Actually,
does,
You're
right?
not, because when he.
Oh, no, I can see you.
Sorry. See?
Good, okay.
You're facing me.
Doesn't have the percentages
Yeah.
on it.
No, this one doesn't need it.
It
Yeah,
does
it
not.
does.
This is more to be in the format that what'll be in the warrant book
Yeah.
ultimately. And I'll just reinforce what was already said, which is that the finance committee did vote to approve this budget last night.
Okay,
It's the operating budget, so I will comment on the warrant articles as well, because we took 2 votes there also. The bottom line here of $32,448,042 would be 3.2% higher than the current fiscal year.
wait a minute,
Oh,
3.2%, total,
yeah, it went up
Total,
again.
total.
3.2%.
Higher, yes.
There's a debt.
But then when we get to
48.
warrants, the bottom line, all in for the town would be different. But
Oh,
this is
okay.
just on the operating budget side, 3.2% higher.
All
Whoa.
right, so where this version we saw on yesterday had 2.9%.
That includes the warrants.
So this one was with warrant, this is without.
So this is the official operating budget.
Gotcha,
Warrants become part of what the true cost of the town is in total, but.
right, okay.
Okay.
I'm
okay.
sorry,
I
so,
know it's
but
a
you're
little
saying
bit
the one that's in front of you that doesn't include the warrants is 3.2, but the one that, the one that's in front of you that doesn't include the warrants is 3.2, but the one
That's
that
right.
does
then-
include the warrants is only 2.9?
That's right, and the version that we would talk about would actually be lower than that still, than 2.9. So I'll get to that eventually, but the difference in terms of these numbers, Nathan, is because it's changed from what we voted. Why don't we hold off until we get to that point?
Okay,
Mhm.
The biggest difference is that we're asking for less capital equipment than we did for the current year. So that's all. It's just the warrant amounts are different.
okay. Why
But
don't you
why
walk
don't we
us
get to
through
that?
it? Yeah,
Ah,
Um,
okay.
I will just, if you'd like, I'll highlight some of the differences proposed for next year that are in here, although I don't think any of them will be totally new to you. For example, in general expense in town hall, there is an increase, a theme here is, as you well know, there are several key town employees who have retired or left. Replacing them will cost more than the incumbents cost. It's sort of a fact of life in the private sector as in the public. So there are several points here with the town administrator, with the assessor, with the planning board. We're pushing up those wages because the market is doing that. And that's reflected in fiscal 23.
and Jim, is this also reflect the Ripley,
Yes.
what we're gonna pay for our share of the
that First
Ripley?
line includes
renovation?
the Ripley
Okay.
thing, even though it's
Right.
not quite resolved how that'll be
Okay,
done. But
that's in there,
it will happen.
okay,
Also, in that line item, we have put that new position of an assistant town administrator / HR person at $80,000. That is in that line item. And I would note that, recall that in the current year, there was a similar position for IT
Mhm.
that, as to my knowledge, hasn't been filled. I just would note that that rolls forward too. So that would be,
that's in here as
that
well.
would be in fiscal 23 as well.
Okay,
So there's a few changes there, but that's probably the biggest operating increase here.
yeah,
Some of these other things and the treasurer has to do with changing the warrant. Remember that you last time recommended we drop that $3,500 annual financial consulting thing that's always a separate warrant, and we just rolled it into the operating budget. We did the same for the assessor's map,
Mhm.
which is, I think, about 5,000, and that's in the assessor's line item, plus the request to boost the position and therefore the salary of the assistant assessor, so it really is a full assistant.
do you know what that increase is for the assistant assessor? What portion of this?
It's most of it.
Okay, of the difference
yes.
between 170 and 204,
Right.
okay,
The planning board, that difference is, again, the expectation of the salary for a new planner. When we get to police, this budget is intended to support 2 additional full-time officers, one of whom I know you've approved for Chief Fisher to hire as soon as he can. These would be offset by reductions in overtime. And after a lot of, I think, focused effort. I believe we've come up with a reasonable number for what the net increase would be of 70,000.
That's for one position.
That's really covering two.
Two positions.
It has to do with the fact that they won't be able to work
Right.
shifts, right, initially. I would suggest and hope that you will give Chief Fisher the authority to hire another officer, that is the second officer, as of July 1,
Mhm.
which would mean he'd need to get working on that one pretty soon too.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
that then you get the training out of the way and then this whole thing starts to kick into motion because
Excuse me. Bless you.
if, if you have to wait 6 months, then we don't get the benefits of the offset
Right. Right.
as we would hope. Also, I would note that the police are in negotiations and that's not in that line item. We've tried to make a provision, but it's not there. Let me see, as we go down a little bit, not too much. And any of these, remember that COLA is not in any of the departmental budgets. So the ones that
Right.
look flat won't stay that way once the COLA has been
But you-
approved by you.
But we had that conversation last time. You've somehow reserved for. COLA.
Yes, we have. Mhm. And we'll just all pretend we don't know where that is.
Right.
And let's see, where do we, I just would, again, note that, sure, please,
Just
Bonnie.
Board of Health. So that includes
Yes,
uh,
additional hours,
additional hours.
Yep.
Okay.
as did this year's budget included additional hours.
Yes.
Okay.
These are
Yes,
more
and,
additional hours.
All right.
This was something that our committee didn't initially support, but on request from the select board, we did change it.
Yeah.
We go down, I guess I would just note on the schools, a couple of things. The enrollment will be about flat in 23 versus the current year. So the high school, we're not getting hit. It's 24, fiscal 24. The other thing is that we got an additional boost, both systems, our local one and the high school are getting an extra 300,000 one-time Chapter 70 money from the state. At the high school level, that translates to reduced charge to us in that fiscal year. For us, it translates to just increased revenue for us. It doesn't go
Right.
into the school budget. So it's a
Oh.
different mechanism.
Okay.
And when we get to the point of doing the levy analysis and how much we actually have to tax our residents,
Mm.
that's where that will come into play as a benefit to,
So these two numbers for the
Mm.
school, the 19,334 for FY '22 and the 19,837
Mhm.
are without that 300,000.
Well, they're without our school, 300,000.
Oh, CPS.
Right.
Got it.
But the other one is in
But the
there.
high
Our share of
school,
that is in
I
there.
see.
And they
Okay.
reduced their distribution that way.
Got it.
The debt service is down because it was refinanced by their business manager last year, just like Kim Kane refinanced our debt, which
Right.
benefited us significantly.
Right.
So in fact, we're talking about a 3.2% operating budget increase.
Yeah.
The schools collectively are going up 2.6%. So we know that that's where the big money is, but
Yeah.
for next fiscal year, they are not, quote, the problem, if you want to
Right.
put it that way.
They're not driving that.
Right. And I think it's, since we always sort of complain about them, I think
Yeah,
that
that's
it's
a
worth
good thing to recognize
crediting that.
and appreciate. Yeah.
And then we go down, I would bring us down to the county retirement and just note that, this sort of goes up every year. It's totally out of our control. The goal is to amortize our obligations around 2038. It's a little bit of a function of how many people are working in the town and when they retire and so forth. But the current schedule we get from the Middlesex Retirement says that this will get us there. This is the second of 2 years of apportionment by them, meaning that in fiscal 24, there'll be a whole new allocation. We don't know how much it will go up, but it will go up. And then there's the debt, as I said, that Kim was able to refinance. And you can see that the reduction of 140,000 benefited us a lot
Yeah.
looking at fiscal 23. We'd be, I think, having a different conversation about some things if it weren't for that.
Yeah.
So, Jim, when you were here last, you sort of stated the objective to get it to 2.5.
Mhm. I say we can still get there, but not in the all-in budget,
So this,
Including the warrant.
including the warrants. And then I can go right on to that if you want. So we sort of talk about the ultimate bottom line.
I don't have any.
Our committee did vote to support a capital warrant of $269,000 for equipment, which is lower than for the current year. I can tell you what those items are, at least all but one, but
Is that
did-
in the warrant article that shows those?
One article's 313.
that's the current year, I think, 318
Oh,
or
I
something.
thought this was updated, no?
No.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So the capital warrant.
The
will be
big
what?
items I can count for all, one I'm sort of missing on, but there's a police cruiser for 60,000. And I think I suggested
Yeah, I was gonna say, please say, as a hybrid police cruiser.
Yeah. Maybe save everybody a few minutes, the
Right.
town meeting.
Right,
There's a all-terrain vehicle for the fire department, 2 one-ton dump trucks for DPW, an AFIS machine for the police department, if you know what
what's that
that.
called?
AFIS, AFIS,
Okay.
it's an abbreviation. Basically, it lets you put fingerprints into a national
Ah,
database
okay.
and get quick response on them. And there's one other small police department item that all adds up to 269.
Firearms, Jim,
Firearms, yes.
firearms. It's
Oh,
Kim.
you are.
I'm here.
Hi, Kim,
I told you I'd be here. Hi.
thanks for joining us.
Thank
So
you.
we voted to support 269 in that warrant article.
Okay,
We also voted to support 350,000 on a facilities warrant, not the 500 that was in the earlier versions of the
Okay.
budget. We can explain that in a minute.
okay,
Even Kate could explain it better, but basically that, at 350, that brings the bottom line for the town down to 2.5%.
got it.
That's how you get that.
That's how we get there. And then that's the true cost of the town.
So
Right.
fewer capital expenditures than last year and less. Did we also allocate 500 last year?
We did.
How much did they end up spending?
Well, we discussed this quite a bit last night. Scott is on the ARPA task force and has reviewed it with Jerry Lerman. There's still 100,000 approximately left over from fiscal 21 appropriation, 500 from the current year.
Mhm.
So there's 600, you might say, in the bank, and they're working on those things. And there's a long lead time for these projects.
So they plan to spend it?
Yes. So then there's about 300,000 of likely ARPA projects that are on the list for the facilities. So that brings us to 900, and this will be another 350. So we think that 1,250,000 will keep them busy for a couple of years. It's not the end, but, keep them busy. So that's why we
do need
feel,
the fresh capital for new projects above
Well,
and beyond the ARPA and the bank.
the lead time is so long, David. I mean, I guess I heard that for the rooftop unit at the library, that
3
they're
to
all
6
ready to
months.
go. It's 6 months waiting for it. But you've got to commit, you can't buy it unless you have the appropriation.
Let me ask you a different way. So the 600 that's in the bank is spoken for by projects, it's just
Well,
timing.
it's intended. Some of those are still in development,
Okay, and then the ARPA money is the ARPA money,
right?
and then the 350 is other things that
In the next.
they're gonna
fiscal year.
start ordering now. and
Right. Now, the only thing I would add into that, since there's still more ARPA money out there, if fiscal 24 becomes a difficult year, there might be an opportunity to not, ask for as much facilities money then, but we don't know. I think this gives more flexibility for the town at that point. So that was the amount we voted for on our end to recommend to you for that warrant of 350. The other 7,500 is to purchase the Munis cash
Mhm,
unit or system
mhm.
that Kim has requested, and that would still remain a warrant article.
One-time expense.
Oh, mostly, there is an ongoing maintenance, but the bulk of it's a one-time expense.
Okay,
And then the one other topic, I would mention is free cash. In the current year, we put about $800,000 into the budget for free cash around warrant articles. Right now, we're talking about supporting the capital warrant of 269 with free cash. We just got, Kelly and Kim just got last night or this morning, the official number on our free cash from the state of approximately 2.9 million. If we put on top of that, the stabilization fund of 1.2, we get roughly 4.1 million is what you would call the town reserves. And our goal has always been to keep those within 10 to 12% of the operating budget.
Yep.
So if you look at the total bottom line of the town, you know, we're somewhere around, you know, 120,000 above the 12%. So we could move it down somewhere. We could take 269, still be right in the middle of that range. But we have to get there. We're working with Kim on the levy analysis, but I think that's coming together too.
Jim, I did get the draft on the audit and it looks like we're at about 14% for the end of FY '21. So that boosted up a bit, which is
For the end of 21.
For the end of
Yeah, I was comparing it to what we're going to
What we're
spend
going for,
in
yeah.
23.
yeah.
Did the 800K that you spent, did you peanut butter it
Mhm.
last year?
Yeah.
Or did you earmark it for specific?
They're for, they were for the capital items and for the facilities.
Okay, so
specifically.
the 500 and the 300.
We don't, you know, we tend never to do it for generic expenditures.
Right, I know, yeah. And so this year you would not do it for, you would simply, you'd reduce the amount of free cash that you're applying.
Yes, significantly. There is less free cash. It's still healthy, but it's less. If we go back and remember that the government ground to a halt in the
Yeah.
spring of 2020, so there was a boost in free cash.
Yeah.
And we spent that extra.
Right.
And so we're still healthy, but,
But the historical range use is what in the recent times?
you know,
before-
it's ranged
before
between
that?
about 400 to
We're on
600,000.
the low end,
We'd be on the low end, yes.
and we always have a lag, right? So at what percentage on the upper end does the total reserve become a concern, as in too much?
That's a good question. I think, you know, we've always spent enough to keep us in that 10 to 12% range
We're above it now.
at the moment, but then we'll bring it down with the expenditures and,
Well, you might, but usually then more free cash flows in the summertime, right?
yeah, it's based on
I
what.
mean, I'm not for spending, I love not spending, but I'm just,
I understand.
is there a point, I guess it's not this year, that say it's now at 16%. I mean, at what point do you say, well, wait a minute, and
Yeah, you try to find a way to spend it, yeah. Now
But
that,
it sounds like we've already said numerous times that 24 and 25 could be much more difficult years.
we're
So it's
thinking
not a
that's
bad
the
thing to
case.
have extra free cash.
right, no,
Yeah.
definitely not.
Now, someone may sit in this chair a year from now and say, well, after all, it really wasn't that bad, you know,
Yeah,
but since we know certain things that are of concern, why not, get ready?
right.
So that's,
Okay.
and. you
Jim,
know,
I have a
we-
question about the capital expenses.
Yes.
What did not go into, the capital expenses? What was pulled out? Because I seem to recall that there was a bucket truck for DPW. Was that
The bucket
decided
truck, yeah.
against?
That was the big item. He also had the thing he bought with the cemetery funds.
Yeah, the rollover truck, or no, the cemetery,
That was a front loader.
Backhoe.
It's a
Yeah,
tractor.
backhoe.
Very expensive, about $100,000 that, so he got that, Nathan. I guess, you know, in our conversations with Gary, it's been.
Hey,
clear that
Jim,
we have-
sorry, Jim, but you should keep
Oh,
your,
I'm sorry.
the
Yeah.
mic to your
Just
face.
tendency to
Yeah,
want to look at
sorry.
somebody.
Yeah.
Um,
Turn around with the mic.
You know, Gary has a lot of aging equipment. And, you know, we bought that big truck last year for $200,000. There's more aging equipment. So we thought, Nathan, that instead of getting something we don't even have now, why don't we focus on replacing the stuff that's aging out? So that was the
Okay.
whole reason, yeah. When he needs
Yeah, I
one, he
just-
does rent one.
Yeah. I think it's at some point we're gonna have to, I think, come through on one just because, you know, for some reason it seems like more trees are coming down and, you know, we did take ownership of all the streetlights and it's just kind of a pain to have to keep renting every time you want. You can't do it really quickly. There was a tree that went down this week that, you know, was over the communications lines and he had to, you know, pull in somebody else to kind of do it urgently. So, whereas he could have just done it had he had the proper equipment.
What about the high school parking lot? That comes a year from now? That shows up a year from
That will
now?
be on the warrant. And, right, the cost to the town will be the following year, fiscal '24. And remember, this is going to be a debt exclusion, so
Mhm.
we'll also have to be on the ballot, assuming it passes at town meeting.
Right.
you have a ballpark for the town, roughly the town's portion is a quarter, well, it's finance, so it's hard to say what annually it is, or,
It's about 850,000 total.
right, so 250 or something.
Yeah.
Well, one time, it's just
Yeah, I don't.
one and done then, right, probably next year.
They made the decision to borrow, and to go this route. I don't know that.
So does that mean over some multi-year term?
Yeah.
Really?
Mhm.
Wow.
But how the interest adds up, et cetera, et cetera. But, I would have thought, given at the moment where we are, we could have sort of dealt with it.
So on, the proposed budget, are there any items that we want to either maybe say we want to discuss at our next meeting? I think in terms of time now, we have a few minutes left, but, or how are people feeling about this proposed budget? Do we, we need to, it's when we vote on closing the town warrant, we already have the,
It's gonna be a town
right,
budget. The
right,
numbers don't have to
right.
be final
So we-
until you go to the printer.
yeah, right.
From now. Yeah,
Right, so we have our March 22nd meeting,
you
that
do.
we could
to make
still-
Final,
so-
yeah.
because I know there were, I don't know, if folks have, want to have a more formal conversation. We really didn't have it about the Board of Health hours. And, I don't want to, just assume that we're going ahead with that.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to have it.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah, I'd also really like to be able to see those numbers that you see.
yeah, okay. So, but boy, Jim, this, I'm very impressed at the 2.5% target, really. And I know how much you all put into this to get us to this point and all the back and forth. So are there any, other than the ones you've mentioned, are there any other unknowns that need to be found before we,
Well, something always sort of crawls
Yeah.
out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
But at the moment, it's just the two negotiations that are underway, the police and the
bargaining,
school.
yeah,
We think the school will stay within the confines of their budget proposal that's here.
Yeah.
And the police we've tried to provide for. I should note that we took a fourth vote last night on a COLA,
yes,
but I think we would reserve that in the interests of other discussions until the 22nd. So,
yeah,
but I think it's probably the number that you'll end up with.
okay,
I just want to say, definitely on the 22nd, we do need to make a decision on the COLA so that that can get incorporated into the
Right.
numbers, because we've put
Right.
it off
right,
for,
yep,
For-
you know,
for Kim and Kelly, it's, this all needs to get distributed out into the line item budgets, and
Yeah.
otherwise the whole year, everybody's got sort of two budgets they're looking
right,
at.
which we don't want,
yeah, so.
yeah, yeah,
We just have to Fisher cut bait on that one.
right. Okay, yep.
So Jim, are we assuming that, so in the capital, you didn't mention the 2 HVAC units for the school. Are we assuming that's ARPA money?
Well, Nathan, they did not end up requesting them either as warrant articles or directly to us. I'm not sure where it stands with ARPA. The HVAC
Oh, okay, so they were
school.
pulled out, they were pulled out
They
of the
pulled it back
request.
out because they don't have numbers yet.
Okay, great.
They pulled them out of ARPA too.
But it's a really big issue with the school. The last time I saw it priced was around $3 million in total. Which could be done in pieces, but that's not in either of these right now.
Yeah. And then, Jim, do you anticipate that, or maybe I shouldn't be asking, maybe I should be asking you, Kate, as a member of the ARPA committee, are you going to be able to provide us with the revenue loss that you're thinking that ARPA would cover?
ARPA will cover, it's kind of like a deductible, in your income tax, you can take a standard deduction. Now they've given us a standard deduction of $10 million of revenue loss.
No, I
Since-
know, but I'm asking more, because we don't, whether there's a specific number though for this budget going forward. You remember the conversation was about, is there gonna be a reduction in this budget that we've just looked at? Because the ARPA committee is gonna recommend a
Yes.
certain amount of funding that will cover some of the.
Yes,
what would otherwise have
the
been
municipal
FY.
I
facilities.
think that's the
That
one
was,
place.
that's where the
finally it
municipal
will affect it.
facilities came in.
Okay,
And
and
I don't think it does that anywhere else.
Okay.
But, and
that-
we.
and that's
we
already
did-
been-
Be in here, it's already taken into account.
Yes,
right?
We've already,
has it been taken into account?
already taken into
Okay.
Yeah,
account.
well, what we did in voting that now, I mean, in a
Yes.
sense, if it goes forward to town meeting and then ARPA vanishes, it's still 350, you know? so-
Yeah.
but-
Right,
but Nick,
okay.
You have like 500 you want to spend or something.
Yeah, actually, we're only up to
Which-
250, so, I mean, we're being really cautious.
And so do
Kate,
you,
isn't it correct that none of the things you're considering would otherwise be operating expenses, normal operating expenses?
Some of them could be, but most of them
They're
are
not in the
not.
They're
No,
not the
we're-
things that are in the budget.
Right,
yeah.
but on the other hand, we also not trying, we are trying not to consider anything that had not already gone through a budget
Mhm.
discussion and, especially for the big capital items
Oh,
and
the
had been
capitals did, yeah.
vetted.
yeah,
But there's a couple of things that's correct that,
mean, if
well, there would
somebody-
be something like the testing, for instance, that's,
yeah,
Yeah.
that would not be normally in the operating budget. That I would consider.
I'm
okay.
just gonna suggest that if there's something that gets approved by ARPA, under ARPA, that actually involves, say, hiring a staff person, that people bear in mind that it's one-time funding.
Yeah.
right.
That's,
In
well,
2 years, we're not
yeah.
saying, well, now we have to pay for that.
that's why we came with principles of no pilot programs, no this, no that, because we didn't want,
That's what I meant.
nothing that would well, obviously, a big capital item might have
Capital's different.
ongoing budgetary implications because you have to maintain it, but that's kind of a little,
Right.
we
Yeah.
cut that a little slack, but we didn't want anything that was gonna create problems down the line.
Okay, so I think if everybody's comfortable, we will move on then to the next item on the agenda, which is the review of the town meeting warrant.
So actually, just one more budget thing. So we have Ken. Remember, we were gonna talk about the updated position. We didn't, the assessor, updated assessor's position.
Was that, is that on our agenda here?
It was
somewhere?
supposed to be on for tonight. It doesn't look like it made it though.
Wow.
It did not, but I asked Ken to come during the discussion of the budget with the finance committee in lieu of that.
Yes,
There's no actual request for an agenda item, but I said the best thing we can do is you can come when they're talking about the budget. It sounds like it's already accounted for in the budget, so there's some agreement.
We tried to.
Yeah, I was gonna, are you good with that, Ken? Great, great. Well, I would, then you don't need to,
Even
you
better
don't
then.
need to
Okay,
come,
good, yeah.
you don't need to come up then and speak. I just, for the record, the chair of the Board of Assessors is in full support of what's in the budget. All right, great. Thank you very much. All right,
Yeah,
good.
And I think this board is in support of that position as well.
yeah, so it was more so because I brought it up at the last meeting, and then if people had questions, we asked Ken to come, but if there are no questions, then.
And I tell you, I think it's just a long overdue. This is, and, I've been talking a couple of times to Brian and he's like, yeah.
Yep.
He's great, though. You should see the 3 screens, he's, I'm very impressed. And, we're coming into the 20th century here, yeah. And
Yeah.
at long last.
21st, we hope.
Yeah, well, this town is a little behind,
Yes.
is what I'm
Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
say.
Yes. Okay.
We thought it was
Great.
still
Are we,
1830 here.
Yeah, let's see if we can move on, although David, you look like you want to say something.
Well,
on the
to
budget.
Jim, no, not the budget, but
Okay.
I'm interested in, if Jim is staying for the warrant articles, that's fine. If he's not, I would like to ask that, then when we move to warrant articles, we take up Article 29 while Jim is still here, which is the
Okay.
finance.
Okay, are you okay with that, Jim? Stay with us for a little bit?
Do I have to?
Okay,
Sure, yes.
thank you, Ken. All right, so let's move to the review of the annual town meeting warrant. And our goal tonight is to be able to vote to close the 2022 all town meeting warrant. That doesn't mean we have to finalize all the language, but we do have to finalize the warrants that are
Just
gonna be
decide
on it.
what's in.
Right,
versus out.
right.
Yeah.
And then as part of that, we put in the cemetery fees, which are already in as a warrant item. And so maybe we don't have to actually vote on the numbers tonight. I don't know, but, we'll come back to that. So let's, so at the request of David, with Jim here as the chair of the FIN team, let's go to our packets, because this is all in your packet. And it starts on, page 45
Oh,
with
that's if you
the,
don't do them separately.
consent, article, the consent motion, which is, but let's go ahead to the end, if that's all right with folks, and we'll look at the town governance ones, which begin on page 58, at least of the select board packet version. You're going to,
On the screen. He'll
oh,
put it in.
great. So go up to,
26 to 32 is it built those?
Yep, yeah, yeah.
oh.
Yeah, we're looking for
yours shows it
29.
Differently, okay. But anyway, we're going to Article,
Oh,
we're going to Article 29, which is the preparation of the annual budget. We're going to discuss that first. Now, let me just,
mine's
just as a quick
not-
backdrop.
I have mine in black line.
This we got from
Look at
the
mine.
Town
It's easier to
Governance
read.
Committee on Monday, I believe, right, Tim? This, but then, later, we got from Rebecca
Oh.
the edited, or her memo to, town council that, so this language in here is what, town council had prepared based on their request.
Right.
Yeah, for the draft warrant, but then town council submitted that to the governance task force. They discussed it Monday morning and had some questions and changes they wanted, which I believe we all saw that memo from Rebecca to all of us.
It's on the call.
Oh, Rebecca's here on the call, great. So those have not been addressed. I don't know if you guys know where that is in your packet, but there is a handout from Rebecca, which I believe, where does that fall? Is that after the town warrant part of the packet, Tim? I think it might be.
It came after the
Is
packet.
it page,
It's
it's
at the end
page
of the packet.
64, it's at the
Okay.
end of the warrant.
Right, correct.
Yeah, there's it's got Jen Gibbons at the top of it.
Right.
And then it includes her memo to me and Tim. And then below that is her memo to town council with an attachment. Kind of
Is
complicated,
it
but
to council or is it council's comments?
no,
Wasn't
she was responding to what town council had provided to the governance task force. That's what's up on the screen right now. So the red line is from Rebecca to town council. And town council didn't see this until yesterday afternoon, so there's been no change in what's in the warrant, these articles in the warrant, to reflect what the town governance sent to Tom Harrington yesterday
Can I ask it
afternoon.
differently, maybe it's hard. In the memo from her.
Yeah.
is correspondence from Tom Harrington.
The-
This
the-
red line in here, that's
That's
Tom.
her,
huh?
no, that's Rebecca, that's the governance task force back to Tom. What's in black is what town council's recommending.
Are you sure? Because this
Yes.
says council. This is,
Yeah,
she's
yeah.
addressing council or
Yeah,
council?
she's addressing,
Council,
Okay.
okay, with the
Very
red line.
confusing. Very.
I know it's, so is it easier just to look at the red line memo from Rebecca, which is up on the,
Yeah.
up on the,
no, that's not
That-
the red.
that's
oh,
not
no,
the red
that's
warrant.
something
That's
else.
The warrant.
That's what's actually in the draft warrant provided
Oh,
by town
okay.
council.
Okay, so, her memo, on my packet, it's page 66. I don't know if it's the same for everybody. You probably didn't set up your packet that way.
I know,
did you?
I
You
always-
separate them out.
I always separate everything.
Yeah, but it's so
Much easier to
let's
get.
go to the FinCom one, because that's what we're discussing.
That's Article
which is,
29.
Article 29. So currently, the language says in the warrant, to see if the town will vote to amend general bylaw section, blah, 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 to provide that the annual budget for the next fiscal year should be prepared by the town administrator and treasurer, or take any action related thereto, has nothing else in it.
Yeah.
And so the questions, what Rebecca replies back is, we are only seeking to empower the town administrator and treasurer to produce an initial budget. And then the TA and treasurer are to work with the finance committee through the entire budget process. So that's Rebecca's revision to town council.
In addition, I have to say, looking at our general bylaws, I disagree that it's 3.9.5, which has to be, I mean, if they want to do this, it has to be amended. It should be, I think, 3.9.4. And
She
unfortunately,
puts that note in there. She,
Right, see the second note, the red line says, also advise us on whether section 3.9.4 of the bylaws also requires amendment
yeah, in
to
fact,
achieve this process.
oh, I see, okay.
Okay, so
I
there's
hadn't,
two
before
things
we
are
get
there,
into
but
the
content,
mechanics, yeah.
let's not do the, the
Okay.
technicalities, but the content change is that she is saying that the language is to produce an initial budget, and then the town administrator and treasurer are to work with the finance committee through the entire budget process. And I guess, Jim, I don't know if you've seen this or if the finance committee's discussed it since you, and whether you want to offer a comment as the FinCom chair on this.
Well, the committee hasn't discussed it.
Okay,
So, if I were to talk, it's just going to be my own opinion and not the opinion of the committee.
okay, you might
I
want to
think-
scoot closer.
I think the committee should discuss it.
Okay,
I think yes, our committee, along with you,
Yeah.
obviously. The first draft, I'm quite confident our committee would have voted against, with not needing much discussion. We're still puzzled as to what the problem is that needs to be solved here. Because we would be happy with any, role that the town administrator and treasurer want to play in the budget process. We just felt that the thrust of this was to put the finance committee in a subordinate role. And since I think we represent the residents of the town and we're independent of any line item budget or project or whatever, that isn't the appropriate emphasis. But more wordsmithing might improve it, but right now I'd say we still have real concerns.
well, I think since Rebecca is here, we could ask her for what the intent is. However, I just want to say, I've had some conversations with one of the members, and from what I understood, the intent was, again, to kind of, the feeling is there's a lot of silos, and that the budget itself is created in silos, and that the various committees tend to be fighting over resources rather than becoming a team and sharing resources, and that this was an attempt to get that process under, to go a little more smoothly. But as I said, that was my conversation with one of the members who was trying to explain it to me.
If the new town administrator, him or her, were to, come to the finance committee in the late summer and say, I've been working with the Board of Health and Conscom and, Recreation Commission and so forth, bearing in mind the schools are separate and also the police and fire in certain respects are separate, but we've gotten all those groups together and we kind of want to do a sort of an omnibus look at the budget. I can't imagine the finance committee not saying, great.
right.
Why would you not? I mean, it's
Right.
like,
I mean,
nothing
the-
stops
right,
that at this point.
the core question is, does it need a warrant to do what's common sense?
Yeah, and
Well, that's where, maybe Rebecca, if you are on the call,
I am, yep.
hi, welcome, and thank you
Thank you.
for being here. So Rebecca Vieira is the chair of the Town Governance Task Force.
Yeah.
And,
So, yeah, so in
you want
terms
to
of,
comment on this?
I
know
do.
What I will just say, I know, Rebecca, you have a summary that's in a work in progress, that I don't know that people on the select board have seen. I know I've seen, it. Well, maybe it was, anyway, that summary does more explanation about why, but nevertheless, Rebecca, maybe if you just want to briefly comment on this one.
Yeah, so first of all, I think as a matter of law, the existing statute doesn't permit the treasurer and town administrator to actually do that initial version of the budget without a bylaw. So I think that is kind of the first point that we would need to sort out. And I think that that's what we understand. And so we would need the bylaw in place. I think I agree completely. I think that the section 3.95 is actually not the correct section to affect the change. I think it is that 3.94. And my my read on it is if it was 3.94, that actually might be the only change that's needed to the bylaw to affect what we need in order to allow for the treasurer and the town administrator to prepare that initial bylaw. And then the remaining process stays in place. This is to both provide that or eliminate or attempt to kind of eliminate that siloed effect. It's also to enable the town administrator to have more involvement in that budgeting process and help to direct policy the way that the select board sees fit. So that's basically kind of the background to this article.
Okay, thanks. So I think what we're trying to do tonight is really just, as a select board, we're voting on whether or not a warrant should be included, an article should be included. The precise language can be continued to be worked on up until over the next 2 weeks, right? And then
The warrant article, and then furthermore, the motions that actually go before town meeting, is a separate process.
right,
And at any point, the board doesn't want to proceed, you don't move
the
an
article,
article or motion at town
Right.
meeting.
right.
You know,
So
it
the-
doesn't get involved.
Yeah, so the warrant language that we're looking at, that's what we need to, the broad language is what needs to be clear and finalized over the next 2 weeks. So that, because you want it to be print ready shortly after the 3/22 select board meeting. Yeah. So I think we've discussed this article enough that we know so maybe we should, I guess what I would suggest is, since we're on this and we have Rebecca on the phone, we look at the other town governance articles that are in here. And Jim, you're very welcome to stay, but if you'd prefer to do something else with the rest of your evening, thank you very much for being here. Okay, Jim,
Do
thanks a
you want a
lot.
motion on Article 29 to start with so that we get it out, you know?
No, I don't.
No.
Or you want to have all of them together?
Let's go through.
No, but I think we go through them and then we can come back and decide whether we want.
Rebecca,
I
can
think
I ask a quick question? When is the report going to be ready that's going to support these recommendations to give us more background? You're muted, I think.
Sorry. We are working hard on that. We were attempting to get it done, this week. Unfortunately, we've had a couple of members who are on leave right now, 2 members on leave right now. So we are really kind of short. But we are getting rather close. So I think it will be by the end of the month, but we can provide drafts if we need to earlier than that. But we are still working on our, it includes a lot of things like the history of Carlisle, current, a lot of kind of extraneous stuff that just fills out the background of the culture and the residents. So
Yeah, it would just be good to have like the reasoning behind why these articles,
Right.
yes,
rather than the summary that's being kind of written as you're going.
we do. So I don't know if you have in your packet, I don't know if you have our existing, those draft summaries that we had written. Is that in your packet?
Not when I'm looking at the summary is empty.
Okay, so we do have, what we sent to town council initially was kind of our bulleted topics. And then well, not initially. So this is after Barney and Dave and I spoke. We put together the summaries that we have so far and sent those with our bullet points, which I do want to highlight that those were our warrant article topics and not our drafted warrant articles, just for clarification. And so then those summaries are available to distribute. There might be tweaks and additional changes to them, but we are working on that. So we have kind of a version of that you could look at, I think.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Okay, so the other one that I think we should take up while Rebecca's here is Article 27, about the Human Resources Director. And so Tom Harrington's language says to combine the functions and duties of the Personnel Board and the Personnel Administrator into a single position to be known as the Human Resources Director. And the Governance Task Force has responded to that. And Rebecca, I don't know if you just want to briefly summarize the correction in terms of what you want that article to say.
Yeah, so the group had kind of envisioned that the Personnel Board would remain in place in it as an advisory capacity if needed, and then also create, and again, this is where we didn't get the clear feedback from council, have this appointment committee to create a process and about how to make appointments. So
Rebecca, can I just ask, let's set that aside for the moment. We could address the position of the Human Resources Director first.
Okay.
That'd be helpful.
Okay. So I guess that's, yes, we want to, you know, as a result of the conversations that we had, the interviews that we had, this human resources issue was in a lot of responses. I think there was both a concern that it took away from, I think, the town administrator's ability to focus on more critical items. I think there are also feedback from various employees that said that having to have the functions divided up among different people who had other primary responsibilities was difficult for them. They didn't get the support, development, the reviews, all of those things that they didn't feel that was kind of the norm that they would expect in a town. So that's where we were trying to address that here.
So what the change you want in the language is that you wanted to say something like establish a Human Resources Director position that shall have all the existing authorities of the Personnel Director. Now, this is a little vague, the next line, and some of the authorities of the Personnel Board.
Yes.
So just sort of in sum, that's rather than the way it's phrased here, which is combining the functions of the Personnel Board and the Personnel Administrator into a single position.
Yeah.
So it's
and I think this, you know, I have to say my personal opinion on this one is that I think that this is really about a clarity and style potentially issue. I felt like it may have personally felt like it may have said what we were trying to get at, but I think there was disagreement among the members. And so as there was a thought that it was lack of clarity, that it basically was saying that the Personnel Board kind of itself was going to be combined with the Personnel Administrator, and it was not. It was the responsibilities, and there was a lot of discussion around that distinction, which has led to why this feedback is here.
Okay,
so
but fundamentally, the Governance Task Force, this article wants to be voted on at town meeting to either up or down, if it's a yes vote, a majority yes vote, that the town will have a Human Resources Director function.
Yep.
Or is it a position?
It's not an additional headcount. It's not
it's a staff member who's assigned the function and duties of a Human Resources Director. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
How is that different than Tim's role as the personnel director now?
So part of that was there was a desire, which is not included in here, because I think this is more generic than what we're talking about in terms of the details, right? Where this is at the generic level. It actually is recommended that is not, and I think we have in the language of kind of the more detailed version, that it's not the town administrator that does this job, that it should be someone else, so that the town administrator administrator can focus on the business of the town. So it's we are not changing, and that's why it's combined the functions and duties. So it will take the personnel administrator duties off of the town administrator plate. So
They
to
would
speak.
oversee that person, but they wouldn't be the one that's carrying out the functions.
Yes,
Got it.
So an
Okay.
assistant town administrator could fulfill
yes.
that function. Is that why this is not in the budget? I guess Jim's gone, right?
It is in the
It is.
budget in that there's an assistant town administrator.
Yeah, but
and-
not a personnel director.
Yes.
Not a
No,
There's no
personnel.
separate, right, there's no.
Right, no separate line item for personnel director.
We did not,
Director.
we did not believe this was a full-time position, and we did believe it's just that the roles and responsibilities needed to be with one person who is not the town administrator.
Got it, yeah, okay. And, one other question on that, okay, oh, so, each of these articles, has the governance task force taken a formal vote on each one, and is it a majority vote?
We do things by consensus unless there's an objection. So we have only voted on one of these, and it passed with the majority, and that was,
Which one?
it was 28.
The next
Oh,
one.
the appointed
town
town.
clerk. Okay, all right, so
Right.
the other thing where.
Just another question about Article 27 before we move on. What
Yeah.
if we hire a town administrator who is very strong in personnel matters, but we also hire an assistant town administrator who is strong in other functions? If it's written the way you say, the town administrator could not perform those duties, even though that's what they're strong in, and they could offload other duties to the assistant town manager, correct?
As we currently envision it, yes, because we envisioned that the town administrator that we would be seeking out would be more of the business role.
Okay,
So
so, I think,
Wait.
we're clear on, are you not clear on?
I'm
what
not,
this is
I'm
at
not
there?
clear on her answer to,
Well, here,
to-
let me try to summarize that. The governance task force is saying, see if I have this right, Rebecca, that this article, however it's rephrased, is specifically saying that the functions and duties of a human resources, the functions of a human resources, department, whatever, would be, it's not a department, the human resources functions and duties would be lodged with one person.
Yep.
And that person would not be the town administrator. Is that a correct summary, Rebecca?
Yes, though the town, yes, that's the
Okay, so
concept.
let's leave
Yep.
it- Let's leave it at that.
But I
because
still
it's
need to-
Important for us to. okay,
understand, but I still need to clarify. Nathan just asked a question
Right.
and
Yeah,
I did not understand the answer then because I understood that she said,
She's saying yes, it would not, the way they currently have it is the TA would not be
absolutely,
able
okay.
to do that function.
Uh,
Right, which is, as you can probably tell, that's
We're
the
not
problem, Rebecca, to have it be stipulated that way, that there's no.
Try not to be
flexibility.
prescriptive.
I mean, it's a wording thing though, right?
Right, it's a
Yeah,
wording.
yeah, yeah,
thing.
yeah,
It could be
yeah.
changed
Yeah.
if you're.
But only if they support the wording change, and it seems like they don't at this point.
But you still have to ask, like Jim asked for the finance, what problem are we trying to solve? And if the problem we're trying to solve is that there's too much on the plate of the TA, right? Then let's approach that as the problem we're trying to solve, not be so prescriptive down to the next level.
I would say the problem isn't that, but what I'm hearing from Rebecca, and certainly heard from a number of people, is that it's that the human resources functions are not being
Right.
they're not being done.
Right.
And so this article, my understanding is the design of this article is to require that those functions be done and they be lodged with one individual.
Right, but also to Nathan's point, that individual, not the TA. And
Well,
Lathan has a hypothetical that it can be there. So I
Right,
go
and
back to
so-
what I said. They aren't being done. And I want to say it again,
They're trying to solve.
and the similar one with the with the budget, that the TA is not today, and maybe the finance director not driving, doing
Right.
the budget process. These are functions not being done, maybe too much in the job description of a single person, but the antidote or the remedy is not, we will divide it up the way we think it is in 2022. We should design it so that there is some kind of expectation and a mechanism to distribute the load as the TA sees fit or as the select board sees
But
fit.
it's, again, this governance task force, they are working independently from the select board.
Right.
And so they're asking for articles to be put on the warrant. We have to understand what their intent is, which is
Right.
what we're getting at tonight. And then it's our decision as the select board, whether or not we agree to have it be considered at town meeting by putting
Right.
it on the warrant.
But by putting it on the warrant, it becomes a blunt instrument that forces us to do what you said, as compared with recommendations to,
Yep.
which would give much more flexibility. So we have kind of up or down on this.
Right.
Which is, as I said, I believe it to be a
Ideal
blunt
position.
instrument. Yeah.
Which is, I think you and I, David, communicated that very, very clearly, I think, to Rebecca, and hopefully Rebecca, you to the task force. So, on this one, Rebecca, I don't know if you think therefore, even the language you have in red here about what you want it to say, you would want the governance task force to reconsider that, given what we have given you back as input. In order to make this Article 27 not so limited, not prescriptive, and limit what the town administrator can do. If you don't want to consider that and you want it to be, leave it as you say your current intent is, that's your decision.
So it's my understanding that this, as written, we have that flexibility to go forward and discuss in the motion portion, the details of that, whether or not the town administrator could actually be appointed as the human resources director or not. So I think that's probably able to continue that discussion without a change to this particular article. I think that's the motion language. Is that not correct?
You want the article to be
Yeah.
broader than the motion, so
Right.
you don't want to have that prescription in the article because then it has to be in the motion.
Moderator's
so-
on the call, too.
But I don't
I mean,
have
what's
that in
difficult,
Oh, wait.
what's
and
difficult
Wayne
here
was-
is we don't know, it's like, we don't know the reasoning behind it. And it seems like this wording is very different than where we may end up on. So, I mean, for me, it's hard to decide, should the article be in or not be in? Because we're discussing the verbiage of this and we're far away from an agreement on what should be in there. So it's hard to say, yeah, we'll put in Article 27, but not know what Article 27 is going to say.
I think ultimately, though, we're all in agreement that really the reasoning behind this, I think, not to speak for the governance test, but it's to make sure that we have an HR person that actually has the
Have a
time
function, yeah.
and the authority to be HR, right? So, yeah, but it really boils down to, right, if you put it all on one person, that person clearly doesn't have the time to do everything, right? But what we're looking at is, we don't want to just fix it to the town administrator or the assistant, right? Because, as all our jobs are, functions shift and things shift a little bit. But the key is we want to prioritize HR, an HR function, right?
Yeah.
So, again, I'm not speaking for the governance task force, but I think that's kind of what we're all looking for. So I do think the wording here is important because, as David said, you don't want to, bind ourselves now because it might work perfectly for this, the next duo that comes in, but then,
Well, there's another pitfall, in my opinion, which is town meeting is not an uncontrolled variable. And if people interpret this, despite
Yeah.
what they're saying, as adding another layer and decide at meeting to just say no to it, we actually are worse off because now we're constrained from doing what we want to do anyway.
Yeah.
Right, so that's why
Yeah.
I think the warrant is an inappropriate instrument. I like it's a different thing, but transfer station task force, pile of recommendations, off we go to implement, right? What's the other one? The master plan. 80 or 100, I don't know, recommendations. they're gonna go, we're gonna start chipping away to implement. That's good. To me, that's good governance. But somehow we got into this, I don't know why it's an instrument of the warrant, I just don't think it's appropriate. And I have difficulty with that, so.
For me, I feel it's unfortunate because I think largely we agree with what I think the recommendation is here. But now we're all hung up around this stupid warrant. And I find that's kind of unfortunate, rather than just going and moving ahead and say, yeah, we agree, let's do this.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we're hiring the assistant town administrator because we recognize there's too much on Tim's plate, and he is the personnel director.
Yeah.
So we absolutely need to solve this problem with the assistant town manager, which I fully support. I would just hate to say it can't be the town administrator if that town administrator that we hire happens to be really strong with personnel issues. It would be good to be able to, make sure that it's covered, but make sure that it's covered across two people rather than just the one,
Right.
the one person that we have now.
So, Rebecca, I want to just hear briefly from you, and then I don't know, Wayne, as town moderator, whether you have a comment, but Rebecca, do you think the governance task force is in agreement with what Luke was just describing, that all of the select board is in agreement with, which is that the HR function needs to be lodged in one person, and that's the key goal, not whether or not it's the town administrator's role or an assistant town administrator, et cetera. Is the town governance task force, you think, willing to consider a slight change to this to make that clear, or not? Because I know you're meeting again Thursday morning, right?
We are.
Yeah,
I think, yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I think, again, I think that this particular, the way that this article was drafted initially, and then it's really our comments back to council that we're asking for kind of more detail, I guess. But it seems to me Article 27 doesn't prevent, so that's why I think it's the motion language, right? The Article 27 as written doesn't prevent the town administrator from being the
Right. Sorry to interrupt, but
Yeah.
David's point was the last, second to last phrase.
Yeah.
Into a single position to be known as Human Resources Director. Whatever you want to explain in the summary, a lot of people are going to read that as we're adding another position to our budget, and they're not going to be in favor of that. So I think it is worth going back to the drawing board with Tom.
Okay.
If you're willing.
Yeah.
To rewrite this, so it's about the functions of human resources, not
Yeah.
the position.
Yeah.
And if you could do that, in your working with Tom, and he may be able to draft for you really easily, and then you have it Thursday morning and you can just vote on it. That
Okay.
would be great. And so the problem for us, and so I guess we, in terms of us voting on it, to include
I
it,
think do we have to close the warrant tonight?
well, Tim, yeah, what's your feeling about whether?
I just feel like we're nowhere near baked enough here
The
to,
night of the 22nd.
We could do it,
Well, we can chip away at all the
maybe
other
we
things.
could look at the others,
Yeah.
and then this whole group of town governance ones, we could,
But we should,
Let's finish.
because we have Rebecca and
yeah,
it sounds like it's gonna take some prep. Let's make sure we've covered all the.
yeah.
So can I just,
Barney, could I
Excuse me,
break
yes,
in with
Wayne.
a comment
this
that I
Wayne
think
Davis, our
may
town
help,
moderator, yeah.
may help you on this, and I'll invite Tim to agree or disagree with my comment, because a piece of it involves his function. You're in a multi-step process here. And part of the concern that Nathan and others have expressed is, what exactly am I voting on? The way I would describe it tonight is, when you're saying you're voting to close the warrant, you're saying that these are the topics that we're going to have in the warrant with some final language that we will confirm at our next meeting. But for now, if you vote to include this one, it would be with the understanding that, yes, we're going to have an article that's going to talk about, and this is why you would need a bylaw change to say you're actually going to change the functions of the personnel board or some of the functions of the personnel board. So that is an answer to David's question of why do you need to go to town meeting? And further, that they're going to be centralized somehow with a function. And that's what you would be voting on tonight, is just the concept that you're going to have an article that says that. Between now and 2 weeks from now, you will get the precise language of that. But even that precise language is, to the point that Kate made earlier, is still probably going to be broader than what the actual motion would be. So that's why I call this a multi-step process. So, for example, what might be agreeable to the task force and to the select board would be something that is more or less along these lines, with tweaking some language, but may be silent at this point as to whether it must be lodged in an assistant town administrator or it can't be lodged in the town administrator. You don't need to have that level of detail in the warrant. It's sufficient to let the public know that we're going to be talking about something about personnel at town meeting. When you get to the motion, then at that point, if the task force wants to put forth a motion that says, yes, these are all the things we want, and we want to insist, we, the task force, in our judgment, think that really it's best for the town if we draw a line in the sand and say, no, the town administrator should never do this. Even if the person is talented, we don't care. It's a misallocation based on everything else the town administrator is doing. So we want to put that in the bylaw. Fine, but that's in the motion. Once it's in the motion, then you, the select board, if you disagree with that, you can say, okay, when you take your vote before town meeting, you can decide, okay, when this gets to the floor of town meeting, we, the select board, are going to propose an amendment that strikes that phrase about that the town administrator can never do it. And if the amendment passes, then we can vote and get all the other things that we do like about this concept. So you just take it in slices. Do you want the general concept of doing something about this function? Then you can put it on, you decide tonight you want it on the warrant. 2 weeks from now, you get a little bit more precise. And then 6 weeks from now, that's when you're as precise as you need to be to get a vote at town meeting.
Wayne, thank you, but
And that will apply, by the way, to all of the other articles that you're talking
of course,
about.
but I mean, we try generally not to get ourselves in a box that we can't get out of, right? I mean, that's
I
part of-
know.
So
Right,
I'm
and plus-
okay with well, let me just ask the question of you. So step one, we like the concept. Okay, great. Then we get to the motion, but I mean, what I wouldn't want is step 3, where it's on black and white in paper and we have to use the tactic of not supporting it or amending it. We look stupid. The task force looks stupid. We'll have a 45-minute discussion at town meeting. And again, as I said, we cannot necessarily control the outcome. So the step 2 becomes very critical then, right? The motion that results from us saying today, yes, we like it. Maybe we don't like the way the motion is written. What's our flexibility at that point in 2 weeks?
Well, the motion isn't going to be in front of you in 2 weeks.
Or whenever it is in
It's
front of
not
us.
Yeah,
until
whenever, then,
beginning of April.
you have, the select board is like, anyone else, you can oppose it outright, or you can offer an amendment.
Right, but we've already put in the article. I mean,
Right.
I just don't like half-baked. I'm kind of like with Nathan, a process issue. I wouldn't
So,
want to start on a journey unless I kind of had the roadmap of where I'm going to end up.
So I think we're
I
kind of
guess-
still where we were 2 weeks ago on this, right? And when we're talking about this, and when you just started this example of the first round, and you said, changing the personnel board and creating a personnel director, I thought that we had actually just taken out the fact that we were, I thought that changing the personnel board was not a part of this process. And so there's so much unknown in Article 27 that I'm not sure if I would support it being on there or not. I mean, it's kind of like, there's
Yeah.
clearly a disagreement already, but I don't have any idea what is in Article 27. Is it changing the personnel board? And if it is, what are the thoughts about changing the personnel board?
Yeah, so maybe let me make a suggestion. We just, a little bit earlier, we had agreed these town governance articles really need more discussion. They need to be reconsidered by the governance task force, which I'm hearing Rebecca saying, at least on this one, they're willing to do. And then we as a select board on the 22nd of March is when we have our drop dead date to vote yes to include them on the warrant or no. And what I believe, Rebecca, if you're, what I'm hearing and I agree with is that the more information you can provide us about the purpose of the article, even though it's not stated in the actual language of the article, right? Because that'll get in the motion, but the more you can tell us what the intent is before we vote to yes or no, include this in the warrant would be really helpful. And
Yeah, if we
would
could have
need
that
to-
part of the draft of the report, it would be really great.
Yeah, and again, I know I know we've been pressuring you for a while, but it is what it is. And so, ideally we have that by the end of next week, because we as a select board need to be able to look at it and think about it ahead of the actual decision on the 22nd about whether or not to put it on the warrant. Does that make sense, Rebecca?
It does. I will do my best to get everybody's, we have most of the rationales written, at least in draft form. So we've got, I think, Thursday, Monday, and Thursday. So 3 meetings
Okay.
before the end of next week, if that is our goal, that we can update those and get you what we have at that time. It may not be our final, but we will get what we have, I think.
Okay, but that we will, whatever you can do, we would really encourage you get us as much as possible. So that's great.
Okay. I do have a question as we go back to town council to draft this. I just want to make sure that we have the continued support to use town council, since it was, we, returned the draft back like within a half an hour of receiving it on Friday, because we were actually in meeting when we received it. And so we were able to put it right up on the board and do it. So we returned it within a half an hour and we have not received response yet.
Okay.
So,
Well, first I would suggest you reach out to Tom and
okay.
see where he is. And then if necessary, let me know.
Okay.
Let him know.
Okay. Thank you.
Follow up is needed.
But it does sound to me like you've got some internal discussions that are gonna happen Thursday. I wouldn't want to send Tom, I mean, the short answer to me is, of course, you have the resource. That's what he's there for. But the nuanced answer is we don't want to send him off on a task that then you change your mind and it's different. So
Right.
I guess my view is that it sounds like you're getting a lot of input from us for your Thursday meeting. And I noticed you had invited a couple of us to participate if that's still open, so that we can help maybe, again, sort of give our opinion. Maybe you'll change some of the way you approach it, and then Tom can work. It gives Tom more to work with. It would be my suggestion.
So what, Rebecca, if you need to, you and I could talk about this offline,
Okay.
about what's the right point at which to involve town council to further revise things. Why don't we try to check in tomorrow on that?
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, great. So we're gonna take these articles.
There's one more,
So which one haven't we looked at?
number
That's a
26.
26, which is
Another one of
the,
theirs.
town administrator bylaw adoption, right. So Rebecca, this, so this is a word change, it looks like you're asking for, is that right? Into an existing bylaw? What are you asking
With the
for?
duties of- yeah.
No, this
What's
is,
the intent here?
this is defining the roles and authorities of the town administrator. It's just inserted into, yeah, so we're talking about 26, the town, it's inserted into a spot where that's just renumbering.
So you want a new general bylaw that describes the roles and responsibilities of the town administrator?
Yes, this was
that
actually
correct?
recommended back in 1996 in the last task force. And
Okay.
it was never adopted. And so
Yeah.
we actually came to this conclusion independently, but then when we were starting our drafting and looking through the formats and conclusions, that it came back up that
Okay.
this
And
is-
so, we don't know what that is. I mean, we go find that, but so what would be helpful for us to have is what are those specific, responsibilities that you want to enumerate?
Okay.
So,
Because tonight we're voting on a new job description for the town administrator.
well, it's just the job description that's always been there, Nathan. But
Right, but
anyway.
only it's still
may
the same
wanna
thing. Right?
Change, but yeah, gotcha. So, I don't know, is there anything the select board wants to say specifically about this one, Article 26?
I
Or
don't-
just that,
I don't have a problem with this one. If it would serve to help give authority to our, because I mean, one of the things I've often said in the 5 years I've been here is, Tim has all this responsibility and no authority, and it would be nice to give him the authority, and I think this would be a step in that direction. So.
If we
but
wanted to change his job description, would we have to change the bylaw?
There's no
If-
bylaw.
Well,
the new, brand new one.
he's asking if we put this in the bylaw, would
Well,
we
it's
have to?
again, you don't want to, I mean, if you look at the bylaws and you look at, say, the one that is the current 3.3. I'll just read it. The treasurer shall receive and take charge of all money belonging to the town and shall pay out accounts for the town upon receipt of a warrant signed by the majority of the select board. I mean, it's very spare and only
Right.
addresses one of 48 things that Kim does. Okay, it says it. It doesn't say that's all she'll do. It doesn't say she can only do that. It doesn't say any of that. It just says one thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe you be very spare in what you say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be our suggestion to the town governance task force.
But I guess I have to raise again, because later in the articles is one that, there are several articles that are after that, one of which says there'll be a fall town meeting, which we support. Another one says that the governance task force will continue. So my question is, given the crunch of time and the fact that this board, or her task force is shorthanded, she didn't say it, but we know it, that two people are not able to participate presently, that they're trying to meet twice a week. It's not a question of lack of effort, but I suggest that we reduce the things, maybe it's the clerk, I don't know, but we just narrow the field while we're doing all these other things like hiring a new TA and give them a few more months, to work on process. I don't like rushing things of critical importance because we make a mistake somewhere.
I think that's reasonable.
Well, maybe Rebecca, I don't know if we had, David and I had suggested that to you before, and I don't know if you were able to discuss that as a task force about whether some of these would make more sense to wait until the fall, but if you haven't had that conversation, maybe it would make sense to do that on Thursday morning to see if it would make sense to sort of do it right rather than rush. If there are issues that we're gonna potentially not do well, you
So
pull some out for a fall town meeting consideration.
yeah. So I don't think, so let me explain kind of where that came from. I don't think that there is a lot of desire for the task force to continue to the end of the year or even to the fall town meeting, quite frankly. There's one issue that we had that we knew that we had not thoroughly gone through enough to include as a warrant article, but we thought it may result in a warrant article. And the appointment, I think the appointments for us said, the appointment letter said that our term was through the end of June, but then in reading the adopted motion, it appeared that that probably wasn't the case. So we reached out to council and said, would we be able to continue until the end of June to finalize whatever we were going to work on for the fall town meeting, and then submit that and be done. And I think this was kind of the response was, well, let's create the term, because there's no term date, actually. There's no like how long our term is in the adopted motion from last year. So I think this was kind of to clean that up a little bit, and not necessarily, there was not really an intent for the task force to actually continue past the end of June, but this was how to clean that up.
Right, but we're not on a process issue there. We're on a feedback from the select board saying perhaps there's just not enough time right now, whether it's the same people in the task force or some people say I've had enough and we have to appoint, or I don't know who appoints it, I guess the town moderator appoint some new people. We're not, it's more a question that you simply need more time. It's not whether you think you need more time. We're saying we think you need more time.
So I think the message back to you is, just raise that with the task force on Thursday. Give them the feedback from the select board and, discuss it and see where you are on it.
Okay.
So meanwhile, are there any others of the governance task force articles that anybody here wants to discuss right now?
Town clerk here, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Peggy, did you want to comment on the town clerk article, as our current town clerk? And it simply says to see if the town will vote to have its elected town clerk become an appointed town clerk or take any action relative thereto. You want to come up and, yeah.
Pull up a chair.
Yeah, there's a
Sit over
chair
there.
there if you want to use that mic at the end of the table.
I'm not really sure there's much to say about it. Apparently they want it not only as an article, but on the ballot. And I don't know why they're doing it this way as compared to the way it's been done before, but because it was done through home rule petition.
Proposed as a home rule petition. The
Right.
first time through, it didn't pass town meeting.
It didn't pass town meeting.
That's a legislative process.
Right.
The way it's proposed now would avoid that. It would need the town meeting vote and a ballot vote at the town election, and then it would become effective.
Right.
There'd be no legislative process.
Right.
No state legislative process.
Mhm.
The town legislature would have voted.
So if it does not pass town meeting, it's still gonna be on the ballot. And if it's voted on at the ballot,
Both have to pass.
Both have to
We've had
pass.
that with overrides and debt exclusions before, where it's gonna be two, and sometimes only one
Mhm.
passes. Right.
so I have to admit, I don't have an opinion either way. I've felt it should be appointed, then I felt it should be elected, and then I've gone back and forth. I guess it's really up to the town what they want.
We
I think
also-
just one thing, Peggy, is I think what we found in the past, because I think this has gone before the town twice before since I've been on. I think if you get up and you speak for or against it, that's likely the way town meeting's gonna go. So if you just want to think about if you would go against it, I just don't think it's worth putting it up there and putting the town through it again.
I guess I want to also say to Peggy, this really has never been about the person, about the person that's in the job. It's just because when you are no longer running for the job, we're worried about who there is going to be in town that will have enough knowledge and training to step into your shoes, because you've been at it for a long time. You had a lot of, you were here as an assistant for a long while, and
Again, I haven't really been at it that long. It's only been 4 years, assistant and then town clerk. But there are some days in being in town hall here that I find that it's really worthwhile be someone who has lived in town and knows the history of the people and the history of bylaws and the history of changes when you're approached for different things. But I also understand the widening of the pool of candidates when you're coming to appointed versus elected, because it's become very narrow when it's elected. That means somebody has to live in town. And in that, there aren't.
And it throws it on a totally different criteria.
Right.
Yeah, so that's.
Is
yeah.
if it is appointed, to whom does it report? The select board still, so that doesn't change. You
Well,
report to
report it
us?
to the
No, you
select
don't
board,
report
she
to
doesn't
us.
report to
No.
the select board, she's elected.
So there's a
She's
whole
independent.
independence issue there too. right?
Yeah,
And there's the independency issue. That's what and I've had that discussion with other town clerks, the pros and the cons, and it's that independency issue, especially when it comes to integrity of elections. So most town clerks have the same feeling that I do. They see the good and the bad in it. And so I kind of is what day of the week you're asking me the question. But it could be a good thing. And it could not be a good thing, because there's only Charlene, Mary, and me in town who have the experience.
that's right.
Is it silent on this? Doesn't speak. It just says it doesn't say like to report to the select board or anything.
Clear that when it becomes appointed, that's,
An employee.
yeah, they'd be a town employee.
So does that mean then report to the town administrator? It's
Yeah,
silent
but
on
then ultimately hired though by the.
But all town
I'm
clerks
sorry,
are-
we can't hear online, whoever's talking.
Sorry, my mic went off. Sorry about that. We were just discussing that, if it became appointed, it would be, the position would then become a regular town hall staff position, and the town administrator they'd report to the town administrator, then the town administrator would recommend, a candidate to the select board.
And as Tim has pointed out, then the review process, for compensation falls much differently when as appointed versus elected. So there's more advantages to who's ever.
Appointed clerk can be on the wage and salary chart. Currently, an elected clerk cannot. That's why we had to go to town meeting to adjust Peggy's salary last year.
Yeah,
Yeah,
She doesn't get step increases,
right. And
Appointed
this,
position would.
just to clarify, this language, I believe, Rebecca, just came from the article we were thinking about putting on the warrant for last spring's town meeting. But then because of COVID, we decided to pare it back to just essentials. So that's why this wasn't on last spring's town meeting.
But it was on a town meeting just a few years ago, and I think it lost pretty significantly. I am in favor of this. I just worry about keep going to town meeting with things unless, if it's not going to pass.
Well, what we've agreed, I just want to go back to what we said just a little earlier in the meeting. All of these articles that are being recommended by the task force, we're going to take up on the 22nd. So,
If I could,
trying to think, so what might be helpful in terms of understanding, I suppose what we could always do is decide to not vote on it. Right?
one of this is
Withdraw it, yeah, but right, we could just decide not to vote on it, to pull it from town, even though it may be on the warrant.
well,
in the
even so,
warrant
even it's
book.
on the warrant, we don't have to
No,
move the
that's what I'm
motion.
saying.
No, but anybody
Not to move it.
can move it if it's on the warrant.
Okay, so anyway, Wayne, you had a comment on this?
well, yes, it was just to address David's question. The authority under the Massachusetts general laws, any position that normally is elected, there's most of them, with the exception of the Board of Selectmen and the school committee, can be switched from elected to appointed. But all of those positions, when they are switched to appointed, and this is in their Chapter 41, Section 1B, the appointment is by the Board of Selectmen for a term not to exceed 3 years. So it's appointed that way. It is, so it wouldn't be, for example, a town administrator appointment. The select board would need to do that.
Okay, so unless select board members have more they want to say on this, I'd like to.
Well, I would just like to add one more thing.
Sure.
All town clerks are also report to the Secretary of the Commonwealth. We're not
Whether
just,
they're appointed or elected.
Right.
That's for MGL.
right. So we really, even as appointed or elected, I'm still beholden to the Secretary of the Commonwealth and the Attorney General's office and to abide by all of the Mass General laws.
Okay,
So-
good.
So they still have two bosses,
Yes,
basically,
yes.
many bosses.
Okay, thank you, Peggy.
All right.
All right, so I'm looking at the time, it's 9:06. We're pulling out these articles about the governance task force. Rebecca, you're welcome to continue, but we're gonna move on to look at the other warrant articles, and I will follow up with you tomorrow, if that's good for you.
Yes, that's great.
Okay, and thanks a lot for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I
Okay.
thank you for talking through these.
Sure. Okay, so let's go back, and the question is, do we think we can zip through some of these?
As many as we can.
Let me just take a quick look at the agenda, you guys, and see where we are. So we are, well, we have to do the whole search conversation, so it's 9:06. So we're 15 minutes late here. So let's see if we can,
John here.
I'm used to.
all right. Hey.
Steve is here
wow.
too.
You say his name and he walks in the door. Perfect. So you know what, how about if
We'll
we
circle back.
pause on the warrant articles, have the conversation about the town administrator update, et cetera, and the community profile, and then we'll come back, circle back. And if we have, well, let's see if we can make some time to at least get through some of the warrant articles and decide, and also the, yeah. Is that acceptable to the other members of the board? Yeah, okay, great. So let's do that then. John, welcome. Thank you for coming back. Why don't you come up and take a seat here, because there's a
Okay.
mic right there. And then just make sure the green light.
Back, I got, PTSD going now, having to come up to a select board.
I know.
Having
And
to sit at the table.
We voted tonight to
The mask.
take off the
Oh, great.
masks and make that
You can see our
optional.
fangs.
So, now we can hear better.
All you can
So,
see with the
um,
claws before.
All right, so what we have on our agenda tonight is, the interim town administrator, which I think we should start with that, and I know Nathan and maybe David were involved in that contract, Nathan, but, and we have a updated version of it that
Yeah.
Nathan sent out, yesterday we got one, and then a minor change today. So,
You want me to run through it?
you want to just briefly run through that? Let's see if we can.
Yeah,
do this
sure.
in
So I'll
in,
say,
you know, short amount of time.
yeah, I just want to point out that Steve is on the call.
Great. Hi, Steve.
And
Thank you for being here.
so, I'll just go through this, talk to you a little bit about the process we went through, and how we got to where we are. So Dave and oh my goodness, I'm spacing on her name. Town council, and I started with the Donna. Thank you. We started with a draft that John had given us, and went from there. We went through the terms in it, and where I will, there were lots of little areas from the draft. I don't think it really matters that we wordsmiths, but I think that the important parts are hours, rate, and things like that. So I'll just hit those as I go through this. So the first is the term of the agreement. So it starts on March 30th, which is 2 days before Tim leaves, just to give a little bit of overlap. But Tim actually isn't completely leaving, hopefully, because he'll be with us through town meeting. So we feel pretty good about that. It does end in So there's a certain number of hours that Steve can work because he's retired. But and so he can only go so far, but this ends in 6 months. That's partly to make sure that we're on top of trying to hire that permanent role. But we can extend it as long as Steve still has hours and as long as we both agree to extend it. And we can, either party can give 21 days advance notice and terminate it at any time. So that's the term. Bottom line, it's 6 months unless he runs out of hours. We can extend it as long as he has hours. And either party can terminate with 21 days advance notice. We think that's going to definitely get us there, plus keep our feet to the fire and making sure that we find that full-time administrator. The hours are so I'm in section 3 that he's going to work in amount of time and put in the energy to meet the duties of the town administrator. We're not specifying exact hours he has to work every day. Steve and I had a conversation for about 2 hours on Saturday. We're thinking he's probably going to work more hours up front so that he really gets going, and then he'll probably back off just to make sure he doesn't burn up all of his hours and yet still meet the needs of the town. I do want to point out in here that we're saying in 3C, we're saying that he's going to be devoting full-time and attention to our business, particularly during business hours, but he does have a commitment with Minuteman Regional Vocational Technical School District Board, which occasionally would require him to be there on hours. Of course, we're not going to pay him for those hours, but we sliced that out just so that he was able to do that, since we had said earlier in the paragraph that he couldn't. The rate that we negotiated is $85 an hour. And I think, one of the skipping down to 6, we are defending him and, we're indemnifying him, which is, the reason why we're going through this contract. If anything happens, we are going to meet his legal needs. And I think that's the gist of everything in here. And Dave, I'm not sure if you want to add anything. So I did go through this with Steve. I took feedback, and Barney gave me, pointed out that her name was wrong in there. And so I've been back and forth with Steve, and we're both in agreement, as well as town council and Dave, that this is a good contract for us to sign with good terms.
I have just a couple of questions. One small comment, just under benefits, point A, you got an extra THE, at the end of the first sentence, no big deal, but I highlighted it in that one marked up one I sent back to you. But under B, under benefits, under B, I just wanted clarity here. So it says, providing reasonable funds that Mr. Ledoux can use at his discretion for legitimate business expenses, including but not limited to attendance. Now, wouldn't attendance be part of his hours that he is charging us for? Or was the intent here to have more like funds to spend on, I don't know.
The intent here is that if he's going into Boston for an event that we're asking him to attend, that will reimburse him reasonable fees like mileage and his lunch and things like that.
So it says, so you may want to, again, I'm sure this, it's clear, the understanding is clear between you, but just because this is a legal document, one could read this that the funds he's being provided with include the hours of the attendance at the events, in addition to his expenses to get to the event or to pay for registration. You see what I'm raising here?
Yes,
that
but I think
line.
that that's the idea is if we're asking him to attend something for his official duties, we would
Yeah.
of course pay him those hours.
Right, but that's my point. You've got the hours above, I think, don't you, under the compensation, right? His hours are 85 an hour. So we're paying him for that time that he's at the event. I thought you said this benefits under B was not to pay him for his time, but to pay him for the gas, the cost of parking, the cost of registration. That's all. I'm just trying to clarify what you're saying here. That's all.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just not reading it that same way. So if I see this, it's in addition to his getting paid for it,
It says
we would
included,
reimburse him for other business expenses.
right, and what this reads, direct, can use at his discretion for legitimate business expenses, including, but not limited to, attendance. So it's, one could read that as, so the time he spends at the event, he's getting funds in addition to being paid his hourly rate. It just reads to me a little, it's not as clear as it could be, but so I've made my point. I'll just go on because I have one other, which is under benefits point B, that same one at the end, the amount of funds available for this purpose shall not exceed the amount appropriated by the town for such expenses. So this is like an expense budget that's in the town, in your,
It's in the town administrator's budget.
yeah, okay. So,
$500 annually for
Yeah,
meetings and
okay.
conferences. And
all right. Because it just,
hasn't been used much in the past 2
right,
years.
so maybe if it said for the, it's the town hall department budget, right? What do you call your line item?
This is in the town administrator's budget.
Yeah, so
specifically for
appropriated
attendance.
by the town administrator's budget for
By
such
attendance,
purposes.
they mean, for registration fee or any.
No, I
cost
understand that
associated with
the
event.
intent, it's
Yeah.
just not as clear in B.
Mhm.
And again,
Because it says, in fact, in addition
no,
to the
no,
hourly
that's my
rate.
comment
Oh, I see,
that's my
gotcha. Oh,
highlighted comment
okay.
that I
okay.
sent.
Yeah, that's what was throwing me off earlier as I was reading the yellow ones. In looking at
Not looking at my.
okay.
has
and
my
looking at the
copy.
reasonable, looking at the other ones, I mean, I think, let me just read it
I was looking
just
for
so
it.
everybody hears it, tells me. So in both of those, they're both in the same one. There are already a couple sentences. The board hereby agrees to provide reasonable funds that Mr. Ledoux can use at his discretion for legitimate business expenses, including but not limited to attendance at civic events attended in the performance of his official duties as interim town administrator, official meetings, and customary office expenses. Mr. Ledoux shall submit reasonable and customary supporting documentation for all such legitimate expenses. The amount of the funds for this purpose shall not exceed the amount appropriated by the town for such expenses. So for that, to me, that means if he's going on something that we're asking him to go on, we'll pay the legitimate business expenses and he has to stay within the town budget area that is allocated for those types of expenses.
Yeah, but not the labor, not his time, his hourly time, where we're paying him $100 an hour, which is described above. That's all.
$85 an hour, and that's correct. That's
Yeah.
met in the hourly rate above.
Yeah, but B doesn't necessarily make it clear that it's not, doesn't include paying for the hourly rate. It's for the non-time expense, or what are the right word is? You know what I'm saying?
I
That's all.
do,
It's
but
not
I
a
think
big
it's-
deal.
I think
Uh,
it's actually understood.
Yeah, that's fine. And Steve's on the call, so you understand. We raised it, I've raised it, and so I'm fine with it going ahead.
Okay.
But if we want to, so we want to accept a motion tonight to adopt this contract. And
I would love it if we could. I had a great 2 hours with Steve, a great lunch. I think it's going to be, I'm really excited to have him join, and I'd like to get him to sign on the line as soon as possible.
Yeah. That's great to hear.
So I move we accept the contract with memorandum of agreement with Stephen Ledoux and authorize the chair to sign it.
So there was a typo. You wanna just
It's
ignore
not a
that?
big deal, just taking out the words off.
You can do it with a Sharpie.
Okay, very good. I second the motion.
Any more discussion? All right, great. Well, I am very happy to be signing this.
Yes.
Welcome, Steve.
Welcome, welcome.
Oh, yeah, sorry, gotta take the vote. Roll call vote. Arnold, I.
Brown eye.
What ally?
Reed, I.
Welcome, Steve.
Welcome, Steve, and thank you,
It
Nathan.
was a nail biter.
Please sign it. Please sign it, Steve. Please sign it.
Great.
After
Okay.
tonight's meeting, he may have second thoughts.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thanks, everybody. I appreciate, I had a great time with Nathan, and we'll be getting together for lunch with Tim next week to get a little acquainted with what's going on in town. So I'm looking forward to it.
Great, good.
So what is the process from here? Does Barney sign it and then send it to Steve, or?
Then we'll take care of
I
that.
can bring it with me to lunch on Tuesday. You sign
Okay.
two.
Unless we want to get his signature ahead of time,
Get a
Tim, to
signature.
make sure there's no,
Maybe.
backtracking.
Yeah.
PDF from the signed copy tomorrow.
That works.
Electronic signature, that's fine.
Yeah, do a DocuSign.
Right.
Good.
Okay.
All right.
great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Steve.
you.
Good to see
Thank
you.
you so much.
Okay, let's then continue on to talk about the permanent town administrator. And so John has provided us with the, sort of town description. What are we calling that? The
Position
profile.
statement, yeah,
Yeah,
profile.
the, town profile and the job description. I will point out that the job description that's in your packet is the one that actually was for Tim way back when. So,
Yeah, but that's the one I provided the existing one.
yeah, that's the existing
That
town.
didn't come from, yeah.
Yeah, so with if we, that, we may want to look at that as a separate part.
So
that
if you
we-
change that, that's just, that's a hyperlink, we can,
Yeah, we could
we
just.
can
make that
re-upload
right.
what you changed.
I guess,
Let's go down to, the beginning of the, presentation.
Tim, is Sharon on the,
Sharon is on the call.
okay, I just want to recognize Sharon Flaherty is on Zoom.
oh,
So she's joining me, taking notes, and she may have comments as well as we go forward here.
Okay, terrific. So in my packet, I don't know about you all, but it starts at,
it starts on page 1.
Position statement?
69, thank you. Yeah,
No, I have it on the screen, but it's kind of.
so it starts with the position statement?
Yeah.
And so let's talk a little bit about how we want to do this, because we don't want to be wordsmithing. obviously,
Well,
we'll
I
take it
have
further.
questions.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, let's try to sort of look at really key things, and yeah, questions, obviously. But we, we're at 9:23, so we want to try to get through this if possible. So, John, do you want to give a quick overview of what you've got here?
This is
or-
what we put together as a standard profile. It's
Yeah.
not standard in the writing, but the way we do it.
Yeah.
And so we've worked with various folks to get information about the town, and this is what we've put together. The idea is to give some background to candidates. So, it's not giving an entire story, but it's giving enough so candidates can begin their research and to entice candidates to look at the community. So we try to be fair with it both ways. It's fair on behalf of the town and fair on behalf of the people who are reading this going through.
Mhm.
The key is to provide information, as much as we can, which we worked with Tim and Kim in particular to get the various pieces. And you can see anything in blue is a hyperlink, so that when they click to that, it'll bring them, to either websites or to documents, so that they begin their research. So that when they interview, they can come in, or when they're reviewing, as to whether to apply, they'll have some information, at their fingertips, readily available.
So maybe we should just take it section by section, how's that?
Okay,
And look at the position statement to start with,
yeah,
and see if, folks, so not the demographics and economy that is, the specific sections that come later, but just that first page,
well,
which is the position statement. if possible.
Yeah.
Want to comment
Yeah,
on that?
well, I just had one question on the proactive service, on the paragraph that starts proactive service oriented.
Where is that? Oh,
At the
second
bottom,
to last
second to last
on
paragraph.
page one.
It says Carlisle seeking both traditional and non-traditional candidates. And I was wondering what the heck that meant.
Yeah.
So traditional is gonna be people who are town administrators today, assistant town administrators. Non-traditional means many different things. Could be someone who has had leadership positions, might be in a private sector. And, looking at the community, we can interpret it, either way. But, it's just saying that Carlisle is open to, various type candidates applying.
Okay, so, and that would be understood by the candidates.
If not, they call us and we'll explain it a little bit further.
So in the box that says ideal candidate later,
Hold on, we're not doing that.
well, no, it relates to the comment.
Yes.
It says you should have TA or assistant TA or head of it.
Well,
And it kind of doesn't say the non,
but it also in a complex mean or professional equivalent.
so that's your out.
So that's our out, exactly.
All right.
Any other comments on this first page?
One comment. Is Thoreau, did he call it city of the woods or city
Yes.
in the woods?
Of.
He did call it city.
Yeah,
How did we garble it
I think
up? Thank you.
will happen, yeah. All right, let's move on to page 2, which is the demographics and economy section is first.
I didn't have any problems with any of
I didn't either.
until departments.
Any comments on the section about government? John, did you double check on all of these links that when you click on the link?
We will.
It pulls up,
That's where Sharon comes in,
okay,
so,
I just clicked
Sharon will
on
double
Carlisle
check these
Select
and
Board.
make sure
Yeah,
before
one
it gets
works.
posted.
I have checked them all, but I will check them again, and we have to check them periodically in case there are updates to the website.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
because it's not our, we're linking to you, so
correct,
we gotta work in tandem
Right.
on that.
Blame it all on us.
Right.
We hear you.
right. And I will, something that I noticed was that, so there's the important link here to the master plan, and then later, when you reference the master plan, you're calling it something different. There's a logo for, where was that?
Yeah,
Know the plan. Carla, is that from us?
No,
that was from
Know
you.
the plan come from? Okay, well, I'll
We can
follow
double
up.
check that again.
Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
that's from some other town.
It seems different. All right, so if no comments on the government section, let's go down to finances. I've got a quick question on this. Is it correct to say that when you put the budget for both the Carlisle Public School and the high school, it's 59% of the operating budget? Because I thought it was significantly higher.
Typically been 2/3, but let's do some math here.
Well, no, let's just circle it as something we need to follow up on.
But
I'm not
it's
sure where
one,
you-
it's one fraction. I can manage it with my
Oh, okay.
iPhone.
Yeah, and keep in mind that doesn't include the benefit. So if you add that, that's probably where you're thinking about the much higher
Yeah.
number.
Yeah, so maybe that's it. But anyway, I think that just probably should be clarified.
We'll double check what Kim, this was coming from Kim, but we'll just,
Yeah.
make sure, yep.
Yeah, because it's misleading about how much there are, the rest of the. budget.
61% for this budget, 61%
Uh-huh.
for the total schools, all the schools.
Not
Well,
including,
Voc Tech and all that stuff, and debt service and everything.
But no,
no benefits. Because that's not, yes.
I think you should, yeah,
Okay.
the word approximate.
Again, this is a guideline,
Yeah.
so, because you're typical, of a lot of communities, I always say communities are anywhere from, 40% in cities to 75% in towns,
Yeah.
and you fall within, that spectrum. So again,
yeah,
this is just providing, a high level overview for candidates.
okay. Departments, it starts with education.
Yeah, I don't think your 4% increase is
Three.
correct. It's
It's three.
3%. So, 1, 2, 3,
No,
4,
well,
five,
It's
fifth,
3%.
fifth line down.
Oh, 3%, 2.99 actually, or 2.6, he said.
No, school budget.
School
The
budget.
school budget is a 3% increase.
2.6.
Or is it
2.6 all in, three
2.6?
for the,
Tim, if you want.
three for the K through 8. We just did
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
All right.
Might have been an early presentation too.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Anyway,
I would say-
4% is not correct.
I would say approximately
Tim,
3%,
if you want to highlight that and get us a number.
approximately 3%.
The other thing in the education is that it does not indicate that we have an integrated preschool as part of CPS. So it starts with kindergarten
That's a good
rather
point.
than so I would like that included where it
Okay.
says for students grades preschool through 8.
Yep.
So, PS, okay.
Anything else?
That's all I had there. And then if we move on to community services, any comment there from anyone?
I don't have anything until page 5.
Then we get to public safety and Department of Public Works. First of all, with the police department, you comfortable with those numbers in the last sentence?
Is that 9 and 10? Is that really right?
9 officers and the 10 part-time officers?
You are looking at, I know, in addition, but this is based on today's.
Yeah.
Correct.
Oh,
Fire
this comes from,
department, communications department, and then the Department of Public Works. I just wanted to say that, oh wait, where's the COA? Is that already,
that's the one I'm got
is that,
things in.
we haven't gotten there yet,
No,
right?
that's on
Okay.
page 5.
So the DPW, it's just got the transfer station task force in here to recommend, and that's already done. So we should send you language that says there's a newly appointed transfer station action committee to implement the recommendations recently adopted by the select board to reduce the overall amount. And the thing about create an equitable system for paying, that last phrase, that should be taken off entirely, because that's not.
Yeah.
Believe in equity.
Oh, he's starting to get a little sassy here as those days count down. Okay. And then master plan and economic development. So, yeah, I'll follow up on the know the plan logo. I'm not sure where that, or Sharon, do you know where that
Oh,
came
yeah.
from?
I think,
I believe it came from the website, but we'll double check that.
Oh, maybe it is,
I
but
think it is on there.
Okay,
yeah, well, the logo really is just the Carlisle forward.
yeah,
portion
I
of it.
wouldn't
This-
put that
yeah,
know
this
the
is-
plan
yeah,
piece
that's-
in there.
We
It's
we
not
can change
recognizable.
it. If you're more
Okay.
comfortable with the other, we'll change it.
Yes, thank
Great.
you.
All right, so then we get to Council on Aging, Gleason Public Library and Recreation Commission. You want to speak on the council?
Yes, because we have a warrant article, where they're asking to change their name. And so I guess I would like to mention that they want to change their name to, Council on Aging and I forgot what, and Human Services.
Although it's not happened yet.
No,
yeah,
but
you know, if,
I understand it hasn't happened, but the thing is that it says that residents ages 60 and older,
Well,
well-
that's the part I would change.
you know,
It's always been the case, well, it's
Yeah.
been the case for the last while that they serve more than the elderly.
okay.
yeah,
So I would just,
I
where
guess,
it says provides advocacy and support services to help seniors, blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah.
so you get rid of seniors. yeah.
And, I've forgotten the language, but you need a phrase about how they also provide services to
Yeah.
those who are,
Probably in that warrant. Let me-
I think the language is in the warrant,
Yeah.
actually, yes, yeah. Anyway, that's what I wanted to point out.
yeah. On the, on the Recreation Commission, I think it, well, I think they would want the summer camp stuff in there. That doesn't say anything about the summer camps that they run.
So just add and summer camps.
Yeah,
Okay.
all right. And then projects and opportunities. This is a big one because it's suggesting what our
Some of your
important
goals, yeah.
projects and sort of priorities are to some degree. So let's take a look at this one. There are 2, 4, 6, 8 bullet points about the priorities. I mean, I had some comments here. One is number 7, the bullet. I wasn't clear why it says, update and formalize a capital plan to include facility needs and potential building of police and fire facilities in either a public safety complex or as separate facilities. And then it says, and council on aging.
Oh, and that
That
community
sentence
center.
doesn't, did you mean to say a community center for the council on aging? Or why is that
No, we
phrase
told,
there?
some space, and this could be worded better, but,
Yeah.
there was, spacing issues, you're looking potentially at spacing issues for Council on Aging.
Well, it's kind of a whole separate, it's a separate municipal need that has surfaced. An
Okay.
You know
interest
what?
in community center.
How about they just put a period
Okay,
after
yeah.
include, a facility, update and formalize a capital plan to include facility needs,
Which may include
which,
a potential.
well, no,
Okay.
actually, capital plan to accommodate facility needs, period, and then forget all the rest, because I think that's,
Okay.
I don't know,
You open up,
you open up a can of worms. Otherwise,
That's fine. So accommodate facility needs, period.
yeah.
and
Okay.
then, I had one other just thing, I know this is just to give them an idea, but I don't really see something in here that spells out that we are committed to, and that one of our select board goals in FinCom is to have develop a long-term financial plan with, projections and,
Sure.
and that's not really addressed in there. And the other is energy sustainability. It's just kind of thrown out at the end where it says, grant opportunities.
Yeah. Well, that's-
But that was one of our goals. I don't know if,
I think this gives a flavor, I don't, yeah.
and you might say, that number 1 bullet identified in Carlisle forward, comma, the Carlisle master plan or
Mhm.
something like that, because they're not gonna necessarily know what that means. You know what? I did have a comment. Sorry, I want to go back to something where it said, what does it say? You have something about, where did you have the discussion about, oh, I'm sorry, the number 5 bullet on those opportunities says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is that
Take
right?
human resources.
Oh, yeah, it says, and personnel management studies to formalize structure and pursue best practices. I mean, honestly, we want to implement and strengthen what we already have. I mean, I don't want it to sound like we just want to have studies done.
A study in this case means getting the comps, getting the information, to make decisions,
Comps on what?
comparables.
Like
So,
what other towns are paying or?
depends what you're looking for, so if it's policy, getting comparable policies. If it's pay in class, it's comparable, pay in class system. So that's
If
why.
we've already got the wage and
We're doing a wage
classification,
study
it's
currently.
gonna be done.
Yeah, but it needs to be
Yeah, but-
implemented and so on. so
Okay. But this says undertake, it doesn't say implement. I'm just saying,
That's what it truly means in this case. People
Okay.
will understand that in our
All right.
parlance.
okay. I did though, on page 2, again, I know you're saying that this just give people a flavor, but where it says, the select board appoints the town administrator who assists the board and is responsible for maintaining and improving the efficiency and effectiveness. Responsibilities include, so, there's administrative management, that part.
Third one.
Exercising administrative,
Exercising
yeah.
administrative management. I would like there to be something in here about, very specifically about employee goals and evaluations. and because it doesn't really highlight anything about human resources and,
Well, it says serving as the personal administrator, and typically that is incorporated in that
where,
function,
yeah, where is that?
right underneath.
Oh, the
last
line
line.
below.
Yep.
I see, serving as the personnel administrator, okay, okay. And then the other part was, where it says assist the board, that very appoints, yeah, who assists the board. I would like it to be more than assist. I would like it to be somebody who is also advising and recommending to the board. So it's not just it's a person, we're looking for somebody that's gonna really be a big picture thinker and be saying to us, well, one of the things that I'm recommending you address is blah, and here's why, or here's a proposal for how we could handle this particular situation to do it even better.
Sure. So under the ideal candidate, we have adept at liaising between the select board, I'm gonna say actively informs and supports the select board and values best practices. So we can keep going with more words in various places.
Well,
We'll
it's-
put in what you wish, but we
Well-
feel, that's being covered in that, but we can add more if you want.
Maybe it's a nuance, but
You
I
want-
don't view this person right off the bat, that first sentence, the select board appoints administrator who assists. I guess,
We can
it's
change it to
important to,
supports,
well, not just support, but it's,
Okay.
Assists and advises the
yeah,
board.
maybe advise, right?
Okay, so assist and advise.
Yeah.
Great,
Got that, Sharon?
got it.
Thank you.
whole thing, but words matter.
Mhm.
Okay.
Last
Anybody
page,
else have comments?
I had
Because
only one
under-
last
yeah, go ahead.
comment is on page 6. It says the town of Carlisle is an affirmative action, equal opportunity employer. I know we have to say that. I actually would like to see us say a stronger statement
Yeah.
than that standard below,
had the
which
same
is like,
thought. Right.
you we have to say it, so we say it, but we're not gonna do it
Where-
necessarily.
yeah, where does it say that?
The very bottom of the
Last.
two last.
Oh, that
Last
line,
line.
right. What if could we put somewhere, I know I've seen people, it's like what Bernie said when we raised this, at our last select board meeting, that you are actively seeking, I don't know if legally how you phrase it, but candidates of color, that somehow we make
Yeah,
that,
you don't want to, give an impression you're only, or you're
No, I
going down
know,
one path.
but-
So this is the legally advised. I would then say you should contact your counsel if you're gonna, try to change this wording, because there's legal implications. You've
I would
given us
completely
direction-
agree with that. I completely agree with John. We have to be really careful here.
That's
So
fine,
you've
but
given
at
us
least-
direction, which we hear.
yeah.
And we've told you we will advertise, we will seek in different ways maybe.
Okay,
But that's, so we've heard that, and we will, move down those avenues to see what we can do. But I'd be very careful changing language which is standard.
I
without
wasn't,
yeah.
Well,
I
it
don't
wasn't
know
a
what you
matter
were
of changing the
thinking, yeah.
language, but I
But-
guess someplace where it says that Carlisle, is, DEI somehow is committed to DEI.
we're interested in building a diverse,
Sure.
If you want to get Harrington involved, then okay.
It's something I think you should take a look at for a few, for a standard you want to set.
yeah,
But I wouldn't make that, decision, this evening without having
Yeah,
a broader
without
discussion.
town, yeah.
So I think
yeah.
you're making a very solid point.
Okay, well, that's
and-
mostly what I'm trying to make is the
Yep.
point.
So work with, work with, work with the new person coming in to
Yeah,
strengthen that point in a way that's acceptable moving forward. I
yeah,
just don't want you to get into trouble.
yeah,
you know,
no, I
on
appreciate that,
this.
I appreciate that. On the ideal candidate, I'm just remembering, Tim, something you've said a number of times as we've talked about the position of the town administrator, which is, given we're such a small town, and I know you talk about that a little bit, about working in a small community, but being ready to take on any task, large or small, the whole, you know, if the mail needs to get to the post office and there's not somebody here to get it there, that the town administrator does it, and you don't really have a thing in there about that. So I think it is important for people to understand that may not be coming from a small town.
So small task
Experience.
oriented as well, you know.
Yeah, and, right,
All hands on board.
and all hands on deck, or team approach, or, you know, however you want to say that.
Hands on.
Yep, ready to roll up their sleeves and work as part of the team.
Yes,
Exactly.
you, exactly.
There you got it, Sharon.
Someone called it a blue collar manager to me not too long ago.
Okay, so,
I think I mentioned that to you, you know, over the weekend. And, you know, in some communities, you know, you don't have the staff to necessarily do everything.
I mean,
You
this
have
is
to, you know.
what we were doing with our facilities manager at the school as well. I mean, if they don't want to pick up a wrench,
Yeah.
forget it. You know, we don't want somebody
So I
says,
did mention, we had that discussion, or I had it with David over the weekend, and so you can hear, I understand it, you know, so that's what we'll be passing through when we have these discussions.
Yeah, good, good. And so the job description, we have to look at that. Do you need that? When do you want that complete?
You know,
revised?
it's, first of all, folks really aren't looking at job descriptions, you know, when they're
Yeah,
looking at this. I think you should be working at that, you know, for when you bring in, you're not gonna get that done. You got a lot going on right now
Right.
at town meeting. So I think you work that as you're bringing in the new person down the road, and Steve can maybe, you know, and Tim can work with you on that.
Yeah.
But it's not something I think you need to,
I was
you know,
gonna ask you if you had any examples.
But this won't be included in the packet that
not,
candidates look
it's
at?
the link they look at, but candidates aren't looking necessarily.
Okay.
Anybody who's understanding what the job is looking more at this.
Where is this
and-
from? Where did this back? They don't look the same anyway, the job descriptions.
Yeah, exactly.
Consultant wrote them all.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, it's linked. He found a link to it.
Before John
The
linked
packet
it.
I provided.
I understand, but if I were to get on the town website now, would I find this? This position description?
Yeah.
So when we did like our name change to select board, we didn't go through all this stuff.
No, we didn't,
No,
you know, because I found all the select
Yeah.
board and selectmen is in here.
Right,
Um,
that's what I was gonna say.
So there's lots of out-of-date stuff we have to
Yeah.
fix.
Yeah.
So let's not hang up. on
But
it.
I guess my other question is, do you have examples of job descriptions that you feel are
We can take a,
exemplary?
we'll take a look and see what we have. Again, we really deal in the job description piece.
Okay,
Okay.
all right,
you
all right.
know, So, but we can take a look.
Okay, well, we can also look, you know, at other towns. I mean, I just don't believe in reinventing the wheel
I
personally.
agree with
so
you.
that's why-
So if you're gonna look at it, I
Yeah.
think you go out and get a few examples, you know, and I can take a look at my stuff and see what I have.
So if it isn't linked though, I think we should put the date on here. So it's clear,
Yeah.
because this one line operates an automobile, telephone and standard office machine. I mean,
All right, so we'll put,
Honestly, I wouldn't,
Machine gives it away too.
Yeah.
how anachronistic it is, I would
Well-
not even link it.
so why don't we
Yeah.
just eliminate it?
I would
let's
delink it.
eliminate it.
Sharon, let's
Oh, I
eliminate
see.
the
That
job
was the skill
description.
and the use of the above mentioned equipment?
Exactly.
Oh, my God.
That was the IT manager of the day.
Right.
Telephone.
Okay, good.
I mean,
I'm
Yeah.
glad
Tim and
that
I
you did
started
that.
with the horse and buggy, so I mean, you know, we'll go
Yeah.
back to that, so.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so if that's out of there, then we don't
I
have to
didn't have to
change.
read
the-
that.
I'm still sore over,
It's easy
Barney
on that.
referring to people over 60 as the elderly
Yeah, yeah.
When did I do that?
10 minutes
Oh,
ago.
About the COA. Hey, I'm in that category.
Elderly? Really?
I'm sorry.
The elderly's like my mom. She's 93.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. That's true. Old people are always the age of your parent. Yeah, but you know what? I'm 3/4 of a century old.
Never know.
It was interesting, my last couple of years, I go to the council on aging, and I was with my people. You know, so it's like,
Okay, well, that's great. So that's the community profile and we've eliminated the job description being, the town administrator,
We delinked it.
we
delinked
delinked it,
We
right?
have an action to fix
Okay,
it.
and
But
we have-
Probably we gotta fix about 40 other jobs.
Yeah,
Otherwise, we think we're ready to go with the.
so two more pieces,
Position?
the
Okay.
big yellow sections on this, so,
yeah.
we'll fill in the date. So
Oh,
at this
yes.
point, if we can get this done this week, Sharon, will we put maybe 4 weeks on it? For for an application date. We'll take a look at that calendar. So about 4 weeks, Sharon?
Yes,
So we'll get that done maybe by the end of the week, and we'll look at, the 4 weeks out, in the calendar to
So-
put apply by,
So like posting it, putting it out there, say, starting Monday, you're thinking? Is that what you're
Yes,
thinking?
yeah. Sharon, you think Monday's doable? Get this done?
yeah, absolutely. I'll just want to double check with probably you and Tim to make sure that everything's been rewritten the right way. And that shouldn't be a problem at all and then we just need that first page yellow figure filled in.
Yeah, so we'll do that in 4 weeks, and so then the last piece is the annual salary, the
Yeah.
posting of that. So,
DOQ, what does DOQ stand for?
depending on qualifications.
Oh. I thought it was maybe depending on quacking or something.
Some
okay.
days that works too. for the board.
Okay,
Okay, so what do you suggest? Or
So-
where are we on that?
so
So I think, I don't know if I believe you had discussion on this, and, I know Tim and I have had a discussion, on this, if it's free to, okay to talk to him. So, I think in the area, you're looking at, I mean, you're in a different position here where you're located, so you're dealing with size of town is one thing, but you're also dealing with, your geographical area of all communities around you that are, higher in salary. So, traditionally, you're at pretty much like the 150 range now. And we've talked and we can easily recommend 170, is a range, that would be, reasonable, for a community of this size. And your position, of a town administrator versus a town manager. So, I think we both felt, I think we independently came up with the same number, as a recommendation. So, so that's what I think we're prepared to, suggest to the board, is a 170 DOQ, and plus or minus, on that.
right,
And then depending on the candidate you get, it's negotiable.
Yeah,
We're not setting the rate, that'll be negotiable between you. But that's given the expectation of what the candidates will be looking at.
It is kind of though that you set the expectation when you put that out there. So around us, I think all of them are town managers. How much of a premium? It would seem like it would be a large premium to go to a town manager from a town administrator when it comes to salary.
Yeah, so, I think, and I don't have the salary survey in front, I'd have to do it, but my understanding, of the area, is gonna be well over 200, for, so is that still the case around here? Yeah. So.
With the town manager role in a significantly larger town.
Correct. So that's why suggesting, not going to that level.
yeah.
right.
But also being, when you look at some of the town administrators, I know of town administrators in the 495 belt who are up to 200, in that area. So I think the 170 is, potentially doable here. And it's a bit of an increase for you, as a community,
Right.
but I think it's moving in the right direction for it.
And so the way you phrase this then is sort of I see you have the plus or minus, so it's
That's
clear
what we
that it's-
typically do, yeah.
So we can, if we found somebody really great and we wanted to go a little higher,
We can.
we could,
And if you
yeah.
found someone who's great, but maybe is, this
Doesn't have
is
the
the
experience.
step,
Yeah.
up for, her or him in the career, and they're at, let's say an assistance role of, 110, you've got some room, to play with.
Yeah.
And, we always talk about, at that point, you can set, a contract where, you're looking for that person to grow. And so you set it in the contract for, to get to a certain point within a couple of years, in there. So that, but, your milestone you're looking at is the 170.
And just, I believe, Tim, isn't that what we sent to, did we send that to Jim Dar for what is in the FY '23 budget? I'm pretty sure I had shared with him that 170 figure.
I think that,
Right.
I think that's correct. And not to beat a dead horse, but we are a 55-45 community as far as health insurance goes.
Yes.
Candidates,
Yep.
that is something they factor into the
Good point.
decision. So it's.
Thanks for bringing that up because that's
In fact, the
that's
head
gonna
fire
be
department
something.
Heads at slightly higher salaries, because they were coming from a town that was 70-30 and.
Especially this day and age, that is significant. We've seen that in other places.
Yeah,
That can be a significant discussion point,
right.
if it's under the standard of, standard is 70 to 75%, depending, but in that realm, that's the standard.
Yeah,
And so you're looking 15% difference is significant when you look at, pay situation as well.
yeah, okay.
But there are towns around us that are at the 50% rate, right?
Do you know of any?
Where's Concord? Where's Concord?
Concord's about 60-40, I think. That they have different rates with different plans, but I think.
Oh, I thought they were 50-50.
Yeah.
So most retiree situations, many are 50-50. But I don't know of too many communities, in this area that are below the 70, and again, I don't have the statistics in front of me, but 70-30, I'd say is probably definitely the norm of what's occurring.
And we spell out, do I remember seeing that we spell out here somewhere, the current coverage we offer?
No.
No, it's not in here. Okay, so that'd be a
That's
conversation you might have with
that's a
somebody.
negotiation you
Yeah.
have.
Yeah, but I mean, when somebody, do candidates typically ask you though about that kind of thing?
They will potentially at some point somewhere.
Yeah, so that you,
But you're gonna find when you know.
yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, we would,
In the end,
that's why that
I'm not gonna
salary,
highlight it,
right,
but if
right.
asked,
Yeah.
I certainly will pull it on the table.
yeah.
But you can.
Yeah, well, I
also,
mean, I think we, we wouldn't put, I don't think we're gonna negotiate a higher rate for this one person.
No,
But
it might
maybe
affect
it factors
salary.
into the salary. I'm just letting John know.
Right,
Yes.
yeah.
It's the insurance rate isn't negotiable.
Right,
Right.
and 170 then is.
Well, we know
everybody
that.
Fine with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Good about
Was there something else?
I would
that we-
appreciate a board vote to approve,
Ah.
with the
with the
corrections.
Changes is,
And we can certainly, we'll send the draft through, to Tim just to make sure.
okay,
But if I could get a board vote, so,
so may I have a motion to accept this,
I move
town
we
administrator
accept
position as
as
amended?
amended, I move we accept the Carlisle Mass Town Administrator position statement document as amended.
Second.
Yeah. So when I sent you, I copied you guys a COA, I reworded the COA one and sent it to you. Just-
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay.
okay.
Did you address what we talked about services to younger people? Okay, great.
Okay, we'll incorporate
Not
that.
just the elderly, Barney.
Thank you. All righty.
Although we're
So,
special.
any more discussion? All right, roll call vote, please. Arnold, I.
Honor.
Reed, aye.
Thank you very much, and thank you, John. And
Sure.
Sharon.
Did you have any questions of us on, screening committee? Are you doing that this evening? That's, okay.
No.
Yeah.
Are we doing that? too?
No, we're not. It's on the agenda, but your chair failed. Well, we did have it on here too, but, I think
I'm just making sure if you had any questions of me,
Yeah.
before.
we may be checking in before the meeting on the 22nd, but
No
that's the
problem.
next thing we need to do for you is to have that group
Correct.
appointed. Yeah. okay.
Yeah, and then we can meet with that group and begin the process of setting expectations and discussions and everything
Yeah.
for, their screen of the candidates as, when we're ready for that.
Yeah, great,
Okay?
good.
Sharon, anything, else from your viewpoint?
No, I think we're all set and there's some time to appoint the committee. So I think we're in great shape.
Yeah, don't give them too much space. Next meeting, they need to do it. I worked for
John-
boards many years.
right,
I'm
John,
not giving you
feel
too much,
free to
exactly. I'm,
Nudge me on this one.
yeah,
Yeah,
I gotta pull those reins back in, before I get
that's
into
right,
trouble again,
that's right.
so.
All right.
Okay,
Well, we need to talk between now and the next meeting to decide.
what's that?
Nothing. It was a bad joke, but maybe true.
All right,
All right,
I'm
thanks a
calling to
lot.
make an appointment with my therapist when I get home.
Thank
Bye
you,
now.
Sharon.
Thank you so much.
All right, it's 10 o'clock on the button. And we have not gone through the rest of those warrant articles. Let me just say that we have the TA report, and I do want to make a quick report on the situation with the pickleball grant proposal. So let me do that right now, if I may, in case people have questions. And then you could be thinking about whether you want to add some time to this meeting tonight after the town administrators. The rest of this is fairly quick after the TA report, to continue on the warrant articles, or just
Next
try to
time.
figure out a way we can get them done on the 22nd, but I'll come
I
back to
don't
that
think we'll
in a
make good
sec.
decisions at 10.
Okay, well, that's your opinion. Well, we'll check in shortly. All right. Yeah. All these good ones.
Opinion of a parent with young children that have to get up.
Gotcha. So I'm going to read this statement that's going to be, it's a kind of like a press release that would go out to the mosquito after tonight. Just as backdrop. So if you all recall, at one of our select board meetings, probably a couple months ago at this point, when we had the pickleball grant in front of us, and we had two different sessions where we took community input, and then we had a discussion about whether or not to have it on the the town meeting this spring. And we had indicated that the Recreation Commission was going to go back and talk to the donor about whether that would be acceptable to postpone until the fall. So he did that, the chair of the RecCom did that, and the donor reached out to me, contacted me, and asked to have a meeting with me. So just the two of us met. Turns out I actually know him, which I had just not made the connection before, but anyway. So I met with him once over lunch, and then the chair of the Rec Commission and I had a follow-up meeting with him over lunch. And then just before I left town, he called me and then called the Recreation Commission chair to indicate that he had decided to withdraw the grant offer. So I want to read you the statement that is what we want to put out there about it, and then we can have further discussion if you feel the need to do that now. The directors of the Steinberg Lally Foundation have withdrawn their offer of a grant for the construction of a pickleball facility and seed funding for a community center on the Bantam Mosley land. After the select board voted to postpone consideration of the proposal until a special town meeting in the fall, there'd been additional discussions between the foundation, members of the Recreation Commission, and the chair of the select board. Ultimately, however, the foundation has decided to withdraw from the process. And this is a quote from Drew McMorrow, the chair of the RecCom. The foundation could see that the approval process was going to take a long time without any certainty about the outcome. It wanted to do something nice for the community, and I think became concerned that the process would be lengthy and difficult. And then there is a quote from me, which I did write to the donor. Barney Arnold, chair of the select board, said, although we are disappointed, we understand your decision and appreciate the position of the foundation. We're grateful for its interest in the town, and we sincerely hope that we might work together on future projects. The select board will discuss the foundation's decision at its meeting on March 8th, as will the Recreation Commission at their meeting on March 14th. Further inquiries can be directed to Drew McMorrow with his contact information below, and phone number and email. My conversations with the donor were very cordial, and I think if when we started the discussions, when the discussions had started early last summer, I think if if things had gone differently in terms of the way it became, quite controversial, we might be in a different place today, but I think we sort of ran out of time, I think, with the donor. We felt that it was just problematic that this was ever going to come to fruition. But it was a very cordial, straightforward conversation about their decision. And I do think that the foundation, at least this donor, right? He's the donor that I was meeting with the father, Steve Steinberg, and it's his daughter that runs the foundation, but he clearly, signaled that if we had a project for which we were trying to raise funds, that they would certainly be open to considering, a proposal from us for support. So that's where we stand.
Bowman Drone.
We certainly appreciate their generosity, and I would say that a positive outcome is that we reopened consideration of the needs of a rec center. I think it's community center, it's refocused that, and I think that's a good thing. It kind of gotten pasted over after a while. We had a study and then we sort of forgot about it. So, there's positive in everything, and certainly we always appreciate when private donors express an interest in helping the town. One correction, I think, when you release that is just on the very end, just say we discussed. We will discuss.
Yeah, we'll discuss, right. All right, silence indicates we're comfortable with, or not comfortable, anyway.
It's
Don't really have a choice either way.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
So,
It
It's
should be
kind of
noted, we ran it
good
by
news,
the
bad
foundation.
news.
And they had
oh,
no
yes, I will note, yes, we did provide a copy of this press release to Steve Steinberg, and he was comfortable with it too, and appreciated very much that the way we described it and that we had consulted with him. Okay, so that's that. So then, Tim, maybe we should go ahead with your town administrator's report.
Sure.
And I think unless somebody wants to argue strongly, we add additional time to do more on the warrant, the articles for the warrant.
On the 22nd,
I
do
think
the whole
we-
schmear all at once.
Sounds like we're ready to, we'll just plow,
It's not
do
gonna
our
help
best
to
to
do
get
it
through it on the
tonight.
22nd.
But leave enough time on the 22nd.
So Nathan, you comfortable with that? It's my sense is from the four of us here that we're not, don't want to continue tonight on it. You're muted, Nathan.
I'm totally comfortable with that.
All right, great, thanks. All righty, Tim, town administrators report.
Okay, the first item is, we received an annual request, for Old Home Day. To be held on June 25th and 26th, this year. And, we took a letter from, Open Hours, to be chairing it again. So the board routinely has approved, the use of town facilities for Old Home Day.
I move we approve the request to hold Old Home Day on June 25th and 26th on the appropriate town properties.
Second,
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please. Arnold, I.
Oscar,
Brown eye.
What lie?
Read I.
Okay, second item, is in regard to the adoption of the personnel policies. You recall that last summer, the board worked with attorney Donna Brewer, did a pretty substantive revision of a number of personnel policies. Reason request for the policies, and it wasn't clear that the board ever got to see a clean copy of the policies as revised. They were voted and adopted back in August, but we thought probably in the best interest of everyone to see a clean copy of the policies as revised and ask the board to adopt them formally
tonight as they were revised last August.
You know, I didn't have a chance to scroll through these, but I want to be sure, because the last time we voted it, it was with the exception of the military leave, because we had not, because we had to put,
Gotta go to town
had
meeting, but-
to go, and so I want to make sure it's the old, that's not in here. So I'm just wondering why we need to do it again. I would almost rather do it after town meeting when we,
Yeah, now this came from Attorney Brewer, because I said,
Yeah.
Donna, please give me a clean copy. of this."
yeah, but I mean,
I think we should adopt.
I think we should adopt
we
it.
adopt
Yeah,
it.
and then we'll just come back and revise it with if town meeting approves that change.
Well, what I'm worried about is it's already,
Oh, that it may already
In
be
here.
included here.
No, it's not.
It's
We
not?
checked that.
oh, you did? Okay.
Let me check that, Tim, we were talking about that. Or Donna, I talked with Donna about it. I can't remember what we talked about.
Okay, if you talk to Donna about it, that's great. All right,
And
so,
the other thing, did we resolve, and is it in here about the Martin Luther King,
Yeah, that,
the 17th,
not the Juneteenth
Juneteenth, sorry,
is in there, I believe.
it's in here?
okay.
I mean, the old policy is the 12.
It's the old military leave policy in here. Okay, good.
We checked in with Donna on that.
All right, good. I just wanted to, just didn't want to screw up. All right.
So we need a motion then.
Adopt that.
I move we adopt, the personnel policy, and date it. Let me see, now I've just lost the front. As the fourth revision approved August 31st, 2021.
Your second,
Second.
any more discussion? All right, hearing none, let's have a roll call vote. Arnold, I.
Oscar Lilloye.
Brown eye.
Modell, I.
Reed, aye.
Okay.
And, but the masking advisory earlier. Just an update on the electronic voting working group, and I think the moderator is still on the call. He may want to weigh in as well. We've gathered a lot of good information from kind of the three most prominent vendors in the field. And I think all of the products, are good and would be useful to the town. Some are more complicated to use, I think, than others. Some seem very simple. One thing we found is that electronic voting has become so popular among cities and towns that the vendors no longer have to offer free demonstrations of their product. So that it would seem that to get a demonstration, have a live demonstration at a town meeting, it probably would be a few $1,000s to $4,000 or $5,000 in that range. And it seems like a lot of money to have to spend to find out if you like something. So we haven't talked about it, but we could maybe observe the vendors, in other communities and how it works there. It's a very good working group. We got Dave Mackay and Charlie Schiappa, in addition to Wayne and Peggy Wang, asking a lot of good questions of these vendors, and the vendors have been very cooperative. I guess I'd look to Wayne for his input. It just feels like we're running out of time as far as the annual town meeting. Maybe we should look, for something, maybe in time for the fall town meeting, or we certainly don't have the budget to fund the demonstration at this point in time, because, well, normally we'd have some discretion toward the end of the year, but the board has hired Community Paradigm to do the town administrator search. We've hired HRS to do the wage study. So some of the discretionary funds we might have had, I think that was kind of spoken for at this point in the year. But we don't really have a few $1,000s we can devote to this to see, how it works. I mean, I have no doubt. I mean, I think people will like it. And I think there are lots of good reasons to want to go toward electronic voting, and I kind of wonder about the timing of that. And I know that I guess I can see Wayne on the call. I don't see him on the screen over there, but with your permission, Madam Chair, maybe Wayne could weigh in.
Yes, please, Wayne.
Just briefly, yes, I'm support everything Tim said. I'm disappointed. I thought we could be able to get a free demonstration. That's clearly not going to happen. And we have run out of, I think we've basically run out of time for this town meeting. I know we started late, but I think we're going to just continue to meet and see if we can come up with some kind of recommendation later on for the select board. Personally, I am in favor of moving this in this direction, but I do not feel like I know enough to make a strong argument to you or to the citizens of the town that it's worth it. And we need to figure out some more things and figure out the actual costs and support and so forth to make a strong case. So for the future, and perhaps I would just note for Kate that if the ARPA committee opens up a second round for funding requests, we may recommend this for ARPA funding, which is what many towns have been doing in the last year.
Yeah, there will be a second tranche and definitely put it in there. Yeah. That would be a good place because especially if we have another thing, epidemic, something like this, and have to have, remote meetings, and this would be really nice to have. Yeah,
Well, I think the world's moving to remote meetings.
Well, yeah.
We should be leaders.
That
not
too.
followers.
And while Wayne is here and we're talking about having meetings during epidemics, I believe the quorum rule is still out there, and we may not be able to talk about it tonight, but we should definitely have it on the agenda for next, for the 22nd, when we close our warrant to discuss. And if Wayne has any recommendations as to numbers, he could give that some thought, maybe. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, Wayne. Thank you, Tim. Do you have
Okay.
more, Tim, on?
I really don't. There's a draft agenda in there that's gonna have to be changed quite a bit. I think I'll have to give more than 15 minutes to the finalization of the warrant.
You think?
On the 22nd.
Yeah, how about an hour and a half?
I got some ideas.
But you can take off the pickleball
you
thing.
pick up 10
Pickleball
minutes.
can come
Yes,
off,
okay,
and-
but
Yes.
would you put ARPA on there, please? Because ARPA,
Actually,
We've got
I
a
did that
list.
this
oh,
morning.
you did it
Yeah.
this morning,
Suggestions
okay,
to-
okay,
to-
thank you.
We'll meet with, as we have in the
All right.
past, we'll meet with Tim and
Exactly.
rework this
Yep.
one.
Yeah,
The
fine.
whole agenda, yeah.
All right. Very good.
All right, Tim.
That's it.
Thank you. Then for the warrants that have been signed, David, did that in my place last week. So where it says, approved by Barney Arnold on 2/28, that should be, changed to say, David Modell, Tim, under
Oh,
here.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
On that.
Yep.
Expense payroll warrants.
All right, I move
I
that,
think they're standard, so,
I can move the minutes.
okay.
I move the select board approve the meeting minutes for February 22nd, 2022 as presented.
Second.
Any discussion about the minutes? All right, hearing none, roll call vote, please. Arnold, I.
Brown eye.
Odell, I.
Reed, aye. Yes.
Okay, and I think, with that, is there, anybody have a critical liaison report, or we good to, adjourn the meeting? Oh,
Critical,
you know what,
critical
though,
one?
Tim, I think maybe we should point out the dates for select board meetings, right?
Oh,
Because we
those
made
have
that change
changed,
in April.
Oh,
Let's take a look at that,
uh-oh.
because
Uh-oh.
we went through the calendar and looked at the way that the second and fourth Tuesdays fall in April. It means we only basically have one meeting before the town meeting. And so,
Fifth
we're
and ninth.
proposing So Tim's got the dates. Yeah, yeah. You want to go over
Right,
that, Tim?
right. It's now proposed to meet on Tuesday, April 5th and,
We had it in there.
Tuesday, April 19th. Select board would meet, during April. And I should have also noted that the Finance Committee's budget hearing is on, April 11th. As well. Town meeting the 25th of April in, the Corey Auditorium, as far as we know. I think at 6 PM is what, the information we're putting out. So,
Where, and then would we
Dawn on the
meet, if, assuming it's only one night, which I don't know if that's a correct assumption, but would our select board meeting would normally be meeting the night after that? Are we assuming that we would not have
I
a
think, yeah, well, I
meeting
think,
then?
yeah, I think traditionally the board posts itself, for prior to town meeting to deal with
Okay.
any necessary business and normally you wouldn't meet the next day.
Okay,
Unless there's a second town meeting, you know, we can always post it and take it down.
yeah.
To be posted just in the event that goes 2 nights and you have.
Nathan had 3 nights of town meeting one year.
I think that's the record.
Well, I don't
Beat
want to
that.
try to, I was gonna say, I don't want to try to beat that record. Yeah,
Dear God, no.
okay, so, yeah, so you'll post the select board meeting
We'll
for the
post,
25th.
Yes, I have that in there.
Okay,
do that.
so people should put that on their calendars to show, remember, the meeting starts at 6, so we're gonna
So
be
we have
showing
to
up at
post it. Yeah, 5:30 or
5 or 5:30?
Yeah.
Okay,
Why do I have 4 PM Finance Committee on the 25th?
And the caucus is when?
Monday.
Monday, the 14th. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah, and that's gonna be here in the Clark room, is it? Where is it? Okay.
okay, any other, date?
5th and the 19th.
Oh.
Yeah, for April,
I
5th
think
and the
it's-
19th,
Town meeting.
and then earlier, yeah,
4
prior to
o'clock.
town meeting on the 25th.
Yeah,
Okay,
must be. for-
and then April and then
umbrella.
May. Does May get back on a normal second and fourth
Uh,
Tuesday? I know this is after you, Tim, but.
Guess I had.
He doesn't care. Yeah, no,
Okay,
in fact,
that's okay, Tim.
Just randomly answer.
yeah,
Nobody-
it has,
Nobody can hold you
it
accountable.
Right.
it should, because if it's the
Just say yes.
25th,
Yeah, exactly.
we should go to the 10th, which would then be the second Tuesday.
Yeah.
And then all the future events.
Actually,
later.
sure is a better answer.
Sure.
Okay.
Put 'em in your list.
All right.
Sure.
All right, we can review that then in, at our
Yeah.
next meeting if needed. All right, well, everybody, I would love to entertain an motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Oh, discussion? Roll call. Arnold, I.
Really?
Brown eye.
Well, I.
Reed, I.
All right, thank you all very much. Thanks to